So somehow it just went from Mike to LeBron, and you just threw my guy out of the conversation. His name needs to be in there all the time.
Man, Lord, people don't even know what the 24 stand for. People don't even understand that was a sign to everybody that he was a step above 23, if y'all even got that.
That's why he went with 24?
That's why he went 24, and that was a shot at Mike.
The most skilled player I've ever seen is Kobe.
Okay. More than MJ?
The most skilled NBA, the most skilled basketball player I ever seen is Kobe Bean Bryant.
Kobe has never been out of the best basketball player of all time debate. Never. Because I played against him. I had guarded. Badass man. The ball in his hand. Competitive as they come, 5 rings, all of it. You can't talk about because he had Shaq. No, he got 5 rings, man. Through our generation of playing, my 15 years of playing basketball, Kobe Bryant was the best basketball player in the National Basketball Association. Without question.
Damn, man.
Obviously, Kobe Bryant is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. But usually, when the GOAT debate comes up, most people will act like there's no genuine case for Kobe. From my experience, if you suggest it, you'll usually get scoffed at, laughed at, or even mocked for simply bringing it up. In most cases, the major reason why people respond like this is because most people agree that Kobe wasn't even the most accomplished player at his position. That was Michael Jordan. MJ had more championships, more MVPs, and far more finals MVPs, while being the more accomplished defensive player, and while being the more efficient field goal shooter. Again, reasons like these are why Michael Jordan is my GOAT as well. But the thing is, there's no definitive way to solidify the rankings. It's all a matter of opinion. Usually people like me acknowledge MJ as the GOAT because he was the most overall accomplished and iconic player. But saying that it's completely subjective, there's other ways to look at this debate. For example, Bill Russell was the greatest winner, as he secured 11 championships, and his game was played in such a way that allowed his team to thrive around him. So who are we to argue against his case, when he has the best case on winning basketball? Another angle on the GOAT debate is boiling it down to who was the most impressive, in the sense of which player overcame the most. Another way of putting it is which player made the most of the cards that he was dealt. In my opinion, there's a really strong case for Kobe in that regard, as he had to deal with things that many other greats never had to deal with. For one, Kobe didn't have a single all-star supporting him during the prime of his career. Think about how many GOAT candidates can't say that. Michael Jordan can't make that claim because he had Scottie Pippen. LeBron James can't make that claim because he had Dwayne Wade. Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird each had a collection of all-stars supporting them in their primes. Yet for Kobe Bryant, he had no other all-star help when he was between the ages of 26 and 28. He had guys like Chris Mim, Kwame Brown, Luke Walton, and Smush Parker regularly in the starting lineup. Those are guys who would struggle to get roster spots on most other teams in that era. But due to some of the organization's poor choices after the departure of Shaquille O'Neal, that's what the Mamba had to work with during his absolute apex. Every team who opposed the Lakers in those years were solely focused on containing Bryant. Yet the Mamba still averaged as high as 35 points per game while being first team all defense. He dropped 81 points against the Raptors, including 55 points in the second half alone. He dropped 62 points in just 3 quarters, single-handedly outscoring the Mavericks, who would go on to the NBA Finals that season. He scored at least 50 points in 4 straight games, and he managed to do all of this while playing during one of the lowest scoring eras of NBA history. Just imagine how different some legacies would look if the players didn't have any quality support during their prime. Imagine Michael Jordan with no help between 1991 and 1993. Imagine LeBron James with no help between 2012 and 2014. Imagine Shaquille O'Neal with no help between 2000 and 2002. It completely changes everything. and certainly drops their ring count severely, while also dropping their standings among the all-time greats. Kobe should have been competing for championships those years, but instead, he had to settle for just 5 rings, as if that isn't impressive enough. Kobe's help, or lack thereof, was only a part of the equation though. The other aspect that truly makes the Mamba's legacy insanely impressive is the fact that he accomplished so much despite having one of the longest lists of injuries that the game of basketball has ever seen. Just look at this graphic of the Mamba and evaluate everything he had to go through in order to succeed. Based on this list, Kobe should be a massive what if, and not a freaking GOAT candidate. How do you sprain so many limbs, break so many bones, and tear so many ligaments, yet you still manage to accumulate 5 championships, 2 scoring titles, 12 all-defense teams, an MVP, and end up being 4th on the NBA's all-time scoring list? That wasn't supposed to happen. Nowadays, players sit out games just because they're tired. But Kobe went out there and won his 5th championship ring while having a broken index finger on his shooting hand. After Kobe's famous 05-06 season, he had arthroscopic knee surgery, which is a procedure that has devastated the careers of some of the most promising players of all time, like Penny Hardaway, for example. Yet Kobe went on to break records and win 2 more championships with a totally different group from the one he helped win the first 3. Essentially, Kobe was a warrior on the court, and his resume should not have been as strong as it ended up being. Yes, we can talk about the numbers, stats, and ring counts, but Kobe overcame stuff because of his attributes that are well beyond the stat sheet. During his playing days, Kobe broke his shooting hand. He tore ligaments in his right wrist. He tore his rotator cuff. He fractured his knee, tore his Achilles, dislocated fingers, broke fingers, severely sprained both ankles numerous times, and he underwent numerous major surgeries on his shoulders, knees, and feet. And again, beyond the injuries, don't forget about the talent. Give 1993 Michael Jordan, Luke Walton, Smush Parker, and Lamar Odom, and see how far he gets. Same can be said for just about any other great player in the top 10 list. To summarize it all, no one overcame more to achieve a top 10 resume than Kobe Bryant did. And from that very specific and unique angle, one can at least make the argument that he's the most impressive player in NBA history.
Listen, Kobe, like I said, this entire time, he's our Michael Jordan for my generation. He's one of the best to ever lace him up, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to compete against him basically almost my entire career.
We all know about the Black Mamba. He was quite simply one of the greatest scorers in NBA history, and if you ask me, I believe he was the most explosive perimeter scorer of all time. When the Mamba got hot, it seemed like anything was possible. Obviously, we all know about his incredible 81-point performance against the Toronto Raptors on January 22, 2006. But I would argue that he had an even more impressive performance just 1 month earlier. You guys all know the game I'm talking about, but I honestly think that most of you don't grasp how remarkable it truly was. On December 20th, 2005, Kobe Bryant dropped 62 points on the Dallas Mavericks in a 112-90 victory. This wasn't just one of the greatest performances in NBA history, but it could have been the greatest performance the game of basketball has ever seen. That might sound crazy to some of you, but once you hear the context, I think it will make a lot of sense. You see, Kobe scored 62 points on 58% shooting in just 3 quarters of play. Now there have been other great scoring performances through 3 quarters, where the player didn't even play in the 4th, like Klay Thompson in 2016, where he scores 60 points in only 3 quarters against the Indiana Pacers. Or how about James Harden in 2019, where he scored 60 points in 3 quarters against the Atlanta Hawks. The thing that separates Kobe's performance, though, was the fact that he outscored the entire Dallas Mavericks team through 3 quarters of play, 62-61. When James Harden and Klay Thompson got their 60, they were nowhere close to outscoring the opposing team through 3 quarters. Phil Jackson gave Kobe the option of remaining in the game to play in the fourth quarter and set some scoring records. But the Mamba passed it up because his Lakers were up by 34 points, and he was content with the victory at hand. But if Kobe had stayed in the game, then he would have had the opportunity to do something that's never been done before in the history of the NBA, which is outscore an entire opposing team over the course of a game. When Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in a single game, he wasn't even close to outscoring the opposing team, as the Knicks finished with 147 points. When Wilt dropped 78 points, the opposing team had 151. In Michael Jordan's career-high game of 69 points, the Cleveland Cavaliers had 113. When Luka Doncic scored 73 in 2023, the Hawks finished with 143. Even when you're looking at the highest scoring performances in NBA history, no one has ever been close to outscoring the opposing team over the course of a full game. Also consider this. One of the main reasons why other greats were never close to outscoring an opposing team is because almost all of them played in an offensively inflated era. But that wasn't the case for Kobe in the 05-06 season. That year, teams were averaging only 97 points per game. Since 1960, that is the 9th lowest scoring season in NBA history. By all conventional wisdom, Kobe was not supposed to drop 62 points in 3 quarters in that era, let alone outscore an entire team. The closest a player has ever got to accomplishing that was on November 22, 1950, when George Mikan scored 15 points and the opposing Pistons finished with 19. This low-scoring contest happened because the Pistons wanted to slow the game to a snail's pace in order to increase their chances at defeating the Lakers, who had the best player in the world. As you can imagine, the fans were outraged by this incredibly boring contest. So now, this game is famously remembered as the game that inspired the creation of the shot clock. So outside of that incredibly weird and specific circumstance, no player has ever been close to outscoring an opposing team, and Kobe had done that through 3 quarters with a legitimate chance at accomplishing the feat if he had remained in the game. One thing about Kobe is whenever he had an all-time great scoring game, his production would almost always increase as it got later into the contest. In the 81-point game against the Raptors, he scored 28 points in the fourth quarter alone. In the 62-point game against the Mavericks, he scored 30 points in the third quarter alone. When Kobe scored 52 points against the Jazz in just 3 quarters, 30 of those points came in the third quarter alone. It is very possible that the Mamba could have scored as many points as he needed to in order to outscore the Mavericks in the fourth quarter as well, especially considering how the Mavericks were deflated at that point and had nothing to aspire towards. Then you have to consider the strength of the competition. It would arguably be the greatest performance ever if Kobe outscored any single team in the 05-06 season. But the fact that it was against the Dallas Mavericks makes it a level of excellence that is difficult to even fathom. This Mavericks team was 7th in the league that season in points allowed. Beyond that, they made it all the way to the NBA Finals that year. Kobe wasn't taking advantage of some lottery-bound franchise, but he was legitimately torching one of the select few best teams in the entire league. He potentially could have produced more points single-handedly than the Western Conference champions. Let that sink in. Kobe didn't just pass up an opportunity at a 90-point game in the dead ball era, but he relinquished his chance at the greatest scoring accomplishment in pro basketball history, which is outscoring an entire team by himself.
The only way you can differ him is from championships. Remember that? When he hit like 4 threes in like 5 seconds, remember that? T-Mac was a bad boy too, but he didn't really have enough room to operate. So I agree with what T-Mac said. Probably get a lot of flack, but I always say to myself, I think I could have got 3 in a row with T-Mac. I think I could have got 2 with Vince. Oh, I know I get 6 with Steph.
So obviously, you all just heard what Shaq had to say, and I do think some people are overreacting to Shaq's comments. Because the reality is, Shaq is usually one of the biggest advocates for Kobe's legacy, especially since he passed away. He's always inserting him into the GOAT conversation and is the guy who is typically sticking up for his legacy. But on the other hand, Shaq is definitely a really confident person in himself and is gonna say that he could have won with just about anyone. Being a pro athlete means being a competitive person, so he can't act super surprised when guys act extremely competitive. Regardless, I still think his comments are BS. What I don't understand is why these hypotheticals are always working against Kobe and never in Kobe's favor. For example, what if Kobe Bryant played with Tim Duncan, a guy who has 15 all-defense teams instead of Shaq's 3? Kobe also wouldn't have needed to convince Duncan to stay in shape and make his free throws, like he had to do with Shaq. Kobe easily wins 5 or 6 championship rings with Tim Duncan. See how easy that was? See how hypocritical these Shaq hypotheticals are? Another aspect that people are not considering is where Kobe was at when he was teammates with Shaq. During their first title run, Kobe was only 21 years old. In their second, he was 22, and in their third, he was just 23. Now, Shaq said he would have won 6 championships if Steph Curry was his teammate instead of Kobe. You know what Steph was doing at that same age? At 21, Steph averaged 17 points per game. At 22, he averaged 18, and at 23, he averaged 15. During those years, he was not an all-star, he was not an all-NBA player, and had no accolades to his name whatsoever. And that's the guy that Shaq's supposed to win 6 championships with? Why does Shaq get the luxury of playing with a prime Steph in this hypothetical scenario when Kobe wasn't even in his prime when he played with Shaq? I mean, just imagine if a prime Kobe had been teammates with a prime Shaq. Instead of Kobe being teammates with Shaq between the ages of 18 and 25, what if he had been teammates with him between the age of 24 and 31? They're definitely winning a lot more than 3 rings in that scenario. But that's not what we're talking about, because for some reason, these what ifs always work against Kobe rather than for Kobe. Now let's just play along with this stupid hypothetical for a minute. Let me remind you all that Kobe was not simply a passenger when he was teammates with Shaq, but during the playoffs, there were times where he came through massively for his team just when they needed it. And you can't simply assume that Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, or Steph Curry could have been pulling off that same feat at that same age. For example, how about the game winner against Phoenix in the first round of the 2000 playoffs? How about the fourth quarter against the Portland Trail Blazers in the 2000 Western Conference Finals in Game 7? It was Kobe who led the Lakers in scoring during that fourth quarter, and who led them to that 15-point comeback. And if the Mamba doesn't step up in that moment, then the Lakers don't win that game and they don't win that series. There's a reason why Bob Costas said this while calling the game.
It's Kobe again.
It's because Kobe was the one who was coming through time and time again in that fourth quarter. How about in the 2001 Western Conference Finals in their crucial matchup against the San Antonio Spurs? Kobe averaged 33, 7, and 7 on 51% shooting against that San Antonio team, who did have the #1 ranked defense in the league that season. And are we simply going to assume that a 22-year-old Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, or Steph Curry would have done that same thing on that same stage against that same level of competition? That's not a safe assumption to make. I could go on and on with these postseason examples. But the fact of the matter is that we're getting to the point where these hypotheticals involving Shaq are just getting silly. Now, was he the most physically dominant player in NBA history? Sure, but it's not like he was a player without any weaknesses. And it's not like he was a guy who could win with just any star. If that was the case, then why didn't he win with Penny Hardaway? Remember, Shaq was an absolute monster in Orlando. And if he wasn't quite as good as he was with the Lakers, then he was pretty damn close. By 1994, Shaq was averaging 29 points, 13 rebounds, and 3 blocks, while leading the league in field goal percentage. The very next season, Shaq had similar numbers while leading the NBA in scoring. Now listen, a lot of young fans don't understand who Penny Hardaway was before the injuries. In 1996, Hardaway finished third in the MVP voting, ahead of Akeem Olajuwon, Karl Malone, Gary Payton, who did make the NBA Finals that year, and even ahead of his teammate Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq had that guy on his team instead of Kobe, and it resulted in them getting swept out of the playoffs. Now, to a certain extent, I understand why Shaq is making these comments. But with that being said, I do find it annoying because it seems like he's not appreciative of the impact that Kobe had during their championship runs. More than any other tandem in NBA history, Shaq and Kobe should have been appreciating each other while they were both alive. And the reason I say this is simple. Because at their peak as a tandem, Shaq and Kobe were the greatest 1-2 punch in NBA history, and I don't think it's particularly close. Kobe and Shaq's claim to fame should be the fact that they were a dynasty while their star core was only made up of just 2 players. Seriously, think about how unique that is for just a minute. Michael Jordan's Bulls in the 1990s. They had a clear number 1 in Michael Jordan. They had a clear number 2 in Scottie Pippen, and then they had their clear number 3 in Horace Grant. And then for their second three-peat, it was Jordan, then Pippen, then Rodman. How about the San Antonio Spurs dynasty? They had their clear number 1 in Tim Duncan, their number 2 in Tony Parker, and then their third option in Manu Ginobili. How about the Miami Heat? They had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and then Chris Bosh. The Golden State Warriors had a number 1 in Steph, a number 2 in Klay Thompson, and then a number 3 in Draymond Green. The thing is, Shaq and Kobe were so dominant as a tandem that they won all 3 of their championships without a clearly defined third star / third option. In 2000, it might have been Glenn Rice. In 2001, maybe you could say it was Derek Fisher. And in 2002, it was Robert Horry, maybe? That's what made Shaq and Kobe so special, is that their championship dynasty core was just Shaq and Kobe. And yes, they had role players that obviously contributed, but being able to win 3 straight championships and making the NBA Finals 4 times as teammates, when you two are the only stars on the team, that should be your claim to fame, and that's something that you should definitely respect and appreciate about one another until your last breath. For years, the Mamba has had a reputation of being a selfish shot chucker. Many people think that Kobe cared more about getting his points than getting his teammates involved. Some have even gone as far as saying that Kobe cared more about his scoring than even winning. I absolutely do not believe that, and the reason I don't is because I followed Kobe closely throughout his career, and I remember the several instances where he was anything but selfish. Here's a massive example. There were several games in Kobe's career where he could have broke scoring records, but instead chose to sit out the fourth quarter because it wasn't needed for the win. In Kobe's career, he had 5 games where he scored at least 50 points through 3 quarters of play, and in only one of those instances did Kobe play in the fourth quarter, and that was the game where he scored 81 points against the Raptors. The reason why Kobe played in the fourth quarter in that contest is because that was the only game where he had to in order to secure the win. In 2002 against the Grizzlies, where he had 56, his Lakers were up by 39 points. In 2003 against the Nuggets, when he had 51, his Lakers were up by 33 points. In 2005 against the Mavericks, where he had 62, his Lakers were up by 34 points. And in 2006 against the Jazz, when he had 52, his Lakers were up by 22 points. And in the 81-point game in 2006 against the Raptors, where he had 53 through 3, his Lakers were up by just 6 points. Specifically, in that game where Kobe had 62 through 3 quarters, the Mamba had single-handedly outscored the entire Mavericks team through 3, 61-62. In the history of the league, no player has ever outscored an entire team by himself. Not only did Kobe pass up history, but he passed up possibly the most impressive single-game record in NBA history. He proved time and time again that it wasn't the points or the historic records that he cared about, but it was just the W that he wanted. Another instance of Kobe's unselfishness was at the end of the 2011 to 2012 regular season, where Kobe was in a race with Kevin Durant for the scoring title. KD was averaging 28 and the Mamba was averaging 27.9. Kobe had the last opportunity to win the scoring title over Kevin Durant, and in order to do so, Kobe would need to score 38 points in the last regular season game of the year, which he could certainly do with ease if he was gunning for it. A scoring title in his 16th season would have certainly been an impressive accomplishment for Bryant, but the Lakers were locked in to the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. So instead of selfishly going for the scoring title, he instead sat out the game against the Kings and rested in preparation for the playoffs. I don't think a lot of players would have passed up that opportunity, seeing how guys often care so much about their accolades and about how their accomplishments and stats affect their future contracts. The third instance where Kobe was very unselfish was in the 2003 NBA regular season, and a lot of you guys are going to be familiar with this instance. Because of an injury to Shaquille O'Neal, Phil Jackson had told Kobe Bryant that he needed to be more aggressive offensively, and that was the start of Kobe's legendary streak of 9 straight games with at least 40 points. Outside of Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant are tied for the longest streak of 40-point games in NBA history. The thing is, that streak could have been much, much longer for Kobe Bryant. But after Shaq had returned from injury, he was ready to be more assertive offensively. According to Kobe, that was when Phil Jackson pulled him aside and said that if they're not careful, they're going to lose Shaq mentally because he's not as involved in the offense. For this reason, Kobe took a step backwards and was visibly less aggressive offensively and essentially surrendered that 40-point streak just to keep the team's chemistry going in an attempt to win their 4th straight NBA championship. This was a tremendously unselfish move by Kobe, at a time where him and Shaq had been beefing to seemingly no end. This wasn't any insignificant streak he was passing up either. Even if Kobe had extended his streak by just one more game, he would have surpassed Michael Jordan and had the longest streak of 40-point games since the NBA merger, and the longest streak ever caught on film. Ultimately, Kobe had supreme confidence in himself, and yes, of course, he thought the best course of action for winning was doing things his own way, which was often him shooting the ball as many times as possible. But I think sometimes Kobe is unfairly given the criticism that he was a selfish player, who put himself, who put his stats, and who put his ego ahead of winning. And that's the part that I think people misunderstand, as I watched Kobe play for 20 years straight, and I firmly believe, based on everything that I saw, that there was nothing, absolutely nothing, that Kobe cared more about than winning. One of the most frustrating things about basketball discourse today is that much of it is emotionally motivated, which naturally results in people completely disregarding important context in these discussions. This has stemmed plenty of common, dumb criticisms about some of the greatest players in NBA history. Now I gotta be honest, it doesn't really matter to me who is the focus of the criticism. As long as it isn't based in truth, I'm gonna be annoyed by it. So I may make videos on the dumbest criticisms of LeBron, Jordan, Magic, Steph, and so on. So let me know if that's something that interests you, and if it does, please make sure to like and leave a comment, because that certainly helps as well. But anyway, back to Kobe. Now I'll bet you're pretty familiar with this criticism. It's the narrative that Kobe was terrible in Game 7 of the 2010 NBA Finals, and some have even suggested that Pau Gasol was the real MVP of that series. One of the more recent people to make that suggestion was Dwayne Wade.
Kobe didn't play well. Kobe didn't shoot the ball well. Actually, everybody thought Pau Gasol should have been MVP. That's how well Pau was playing, and Kobe was playing awful.
Now in that 7th and deciding game against the Boston Celtics, Kobe's Lakers were able to come away with a victory, securing his 5th and final championship. But the Mamba only shot 6 of 24 from the field, which is where all of these criticisms and narratives stem from. Now don't get me wrong, I don't care what angle you take. There's simply no way that you can spin 6 of 24 shooting from the field into an efficient scoring night. But what I can say is that there was a lot more to that game than just the shooting percentages. And if you don't understand the context of that battle, then the 6 of 24 is going to look way uglier than it actually was. First off, you have to understand the nature of that Lakers and Celtics rivalry. This was a very contentious rivalry that was often determined with its grit and physicality. Kobe talked about this after losing Game 6 of the 2008 NBA Finals. He mentioned how the absence of Andrew Bynum hurt their chances, due to the fact that their interior defense and rebounding was some of the most crucial aspects of that series. One of the reasons why Kobe famously ran through Pau Gasol's chest in the 2008 Summer Olympics was because he was trying to make Pau physically tougher, who was frequently called soft during that era. And this was primarily in preparation for the next time they were to meet the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. Even in Kobe's documentary, known as Kobe Bryant's Muse, he talked about how the Celtics were tougher, meaner, and grittier than the Lakers were willing to be in 2008. So clearly, this was a defining aspect of their ongoing rivalry. If you were paying attention closely heading into the 2010 NBA Finals, then you knew this to be the case. So what happens in Game 7 of those finals? Well, the referees completely put away their whistles and let the defining aspect of that rivalry be the determining factor in that climactic moment. I say this as someone who watched every NBA Finals game since then. I don't think there has ever been a single Finals game as physical as this one was since it happened in 2010. And honestly, I even think there were very few games before 2010 that could match its physicality.
Now Gasol to the basket, blocked. Fight for it underneath. They have let them play right from the start of this game. There's been a lot of contact down low.
The final score was 83-79, and it was quite simply an ugly game that often resembled rugby more so than basketball. And don't just take my word for it. The entirety of this game is available on YouTube, and if you watch it, I guarantee you'll agree. So yes, Kobe Bryant, with a broken index finger on his shooting hand, shot 6 of 24 from the field in what was one of the ugliest games in NBA history. But you know who else struggled from the field? Basically everyone. People love to bring up how inefficiently the Mamba shot to fit their narrative, while conveniently ignoring the fact that Pau Gasol was 6 of 16, Ron Artest was 7 of 18, Lamar Odom was 3 of 8, Andrew Bynum was 1 of 5, Paul Pierce was 5 of 15, and Ray Allen, who Kobe defended, was only 3 of 14. Basically, the only key player who had an efficient night was Kevin Garnett, who was 8 of 13 from the field. So again, Kobe is often taking criticism for something that applied to almost everyone that game. And yet, what's often never mentioned is how Kobe excelled in one of the most pivotal factors of that matchup. As we talked about earlier, the key elements of the series was defense and rebounding. And not only did the Mamba contain his man to a worse shooting percentage than his, but Kobe also dominated on the boards. Not only did the Lakers win the Battle of the Boards by a significant margin, but Kobe was one of the biggest reasons why. He got a career high in the NBA Finals of 15 rebounds, which was an equal amount to the entire Celtics Big Three combined. Then you look at the fourth quarter. The Lakers were trailing by 4 points heading into the final 12 minutes of regulation. Who led all players in scoring that period? Kobe Bryant. Who gave the Lakers their first lead of the second half? That was Kobe. Who instantly doubled that lead with a clutch jumper? That was Kobe too. Who got the assist on the biggest three-point shot of that series? That was the Mamba. Who fouled out the Celtics' only remaining center and knocked down the free throws to make it a 2-possession game with only 25 seconds left? You already know who it is. Remember, Nearly everyone shot poorly this game, meaning the determining factor for the victor were always going to be the things that were done outside of scoring. And did Kobe excel in those other aspects? The answer is absolutely and unequivocally yes. I do believe, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Kobe deserved the Finals MVP. But people saying otherwise is not really what annoys me. Because yeah, Pau Gasol deserves a ton of credit. And they don't win the championship without him either. More specifically, what really annoys me is when people who didn't watch that game act like the Lakers won Game 7 in spite of Kobe, when the truth is they won that crucial game because of Kobe more so than any other player on the team.
Defense is never a glamorous thing to do out there on the court. You don't get the stats, you don't get the recognition. Can Kobe Bryant make defense cool?
You know what, if I haven't made it cool by now in my career, I probably never will. I mean, that's one of those things that always gets overshadowed with myself, or whether it was Jordan or Jerry West. I mean, we're all great defenders, but it's just not, I don't think it'll ever be cool. We can make it cooler, maybe a little cooler, but it'll never be cool.
I don't think it's a hot take to say that defense generally isn't celebrated as much as offense. This is true in terms of teams, players, and individual legacies. For example, of the top 20 players on the NBA's all-time scoring list, all 20 of them were honored on the league's 75th anniversary team. And yet, of the top 3 players with the most Defensive Player of the Year awards, none of those players made the top 75. Great defense isn't just overlooked, but it's often forgotten. So what if I told you that the greatest era of perimeter defense in NBA history never gets talked about as such? Would you believe me? I believe that era is the 2000s decade, as there were so many elite wing defenders in that era that naturally caused many of them to overshadow one another. Today, we're looking at my absurdly stacked list of elite wing defenders in the 2000s, and let me know in the comments section if there's anyone else you think belongs on this list. First off is Bruce Bowen. This 6'7" small forward would absolutely smother offensive superstars, and he knew how to get under players' skin. He was famously recruited by the San Antonio Spurs to deal with Kobe Bryant in the NBA playoffs. And along with that, he also famously shut down LeBron James in the 2007 NBA Finals, where LeBron was held to an average of 22 points per game on 35.6% shooting. Sure, he is definitely known as one of the dirtier players of NBA history, but regardless of your opinion on that, you can't deny the fact that he was a lockdown defender. In hindsight, people act like Tim Duncan was always the best defender on the San Antonio Spurs, but for a while, the voters saw it differently, as Bowen was the runner-up in the DPOY voting for 3 consecutive seasons from 2005 to 2007, finishing ahead of Tim Duncan each year. Next is Doug Christie. This 6'6" wing was a massive part of the Lakers and Kings rivalry in the early 2000s, and he was a tenacious defender to say the least. Not only did he earn 4 All-Defense Team selections in this incredibly competitive era, but he also finished in the top 5 of the DPOY voting in both 2001 and 2003. Then there's Tayshaun Prince. This lengthy 6'9" small forward was the best perimeter defender on arguably the greatest defensive team of all time, the 2004 Detroit Pistons. It was much more than just that single season though, as Prince earned a total of 4 All-Defense Team selections in his days in Detroit. Prince was not only a suffocating on-ball defender, but he was a solid help defender as well, thanks to his remarkable speed and length. Famously, he had one of the greatest defensive stops in playoff history, when he got this clutch chase down block on Reggie Miller. He also put the clamps on Kobe in the 2004 NBA Finals, as Bryant had the worst final series of his NBA career, as he was held to an average of 22.6 points on 38.1% shooting. Then of course, there was Ron Artest. He was a strong 6'7" forward who imposed his will on offensive players. He was also remarkable at causing turnovers, thanks to his quick hands and thanks to his remarkable strength that could wrestle the basketball away. Not only did he make 4 All-Defense teams, but he was the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year in 2004, as he finished 1 spot above a prime Ben Wallace. Next is Andrei Kirilenko, aka AK-47. This guy was a long 6'9" small forward, who was a master of contesting jump shots. He made a total of 3 All-Defense teams in his career, and finished as high as 3rd overall in the DPOY voting in 2006. Maybe his most incredible accomplishment was when he led the entire NBA in blocks per game in 2005, with a jaw-dropping number of 3.3 per game. Before you brush that off, take a moment to consider how rare it is for a 6'9" perimeter defending forward to lead the entire league in blocks per game. Then there was Shane Battier. Defensively, he was an aggressive 6'8" small forward, who was extremely clever and cunning in the ways he made offensive players uncomfortable, like how he famously blocked the perimeter player's vision during jump shots. He earned 2 All-Defense team selections during his career, and finished 3rd overall in the DPOY voting in 2008, which was ahead of defensive legends like Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, Tim Duncan, and Bruce Bowen. Then there was Raja Bell. He was a 6'5" two-guard who played the game defensively like he always had a chip on his shoulder. He was very physical and never shied away from a challenge, especially in the NBA playoffs. He earned 2 All-Defense team selections and made a name for himself with his many confrontations with Kobe Bryant. Speaking of Kobe, of course, he has to be mentioned in this group as well. The Mamba was generally a very solid defensive player, but he was one of the greatest defenders ever when he picked his spots, like he did in the 2008 Summer Olympics, where he inspired that entire team to raise their game defensively. He made a total of 12 All-Defense teams in his career, which is the most ever by a guard or a forward, and he finished as high as 3rd overall in the DPOY voting in 2002. Next is Dwayne Wade. Flash was amazing on this end of the court, as he had a high defensive IQ and was fantastic as a help defender. More specifically, he's in the argument with Michael Jordan for the title of the greatest shot-blocking guard in NBA history, which helped him earn his 3 All-Defense team selections. Then of course, there's Tony Allen. This 6'4" shooting guard is often described by his peers as the best of the best, as NBA legends like Kevin Durant and Kobe Bryant have both referred to Allen as the most difficult defender they've ever had to face. He made a total of 6 All-Defense teams in his career, with 3 of those being first team. And it's worth mentioning that every time he matched up with Kobe in the NBA Finals, he did a solid job of holding the Mamba well below his usual efficiency standards. Then there was Jason Kidd. As a point guard, it might seem odd to include him in this group, but he was a large 6'4" point guard who would often defend the best shooting guards in the league. He did a fantastic job of containing Dwayne Wade whenever they met up in 2006, and he also contained Kobe Bryant in the 2011 NBA playoffs, where his Mavericks went on to win the series and eventually the NBA championship. Kidd earned a whopping total of 9 All-Defense teams, thanks in large part to his elite ability to defend both 1s and 2s. Then there were 2 other players that I want you to consider: Sean Marion, also known as the Matrix, and a young Andre Iguodala. Despite the fact that these 2 small forwards were some incredible elite perimeter defenders, neither of them earned a single All-Defense team selection during the 2000s decade. That's how fierce the competition was for wing defenders during that era. For goodness sake, Marion finished as high as 4th on the DPOY voting, and Iguodala was a finalist for the DPOY award on 4 separate occasions during that decade. And again, neither of them earned a single All-Defense team selection because the pack was just that strong. But these are just the ones that I'm emphasizing, as there were even more quality defenders than just these. Simply put, I don't think there has ever been an era as loaded as the 2000s in terms of perimeter defense. Around the time that Kobe retired, I remember many people calling him the last of a dying breed. That's because in today's modern NBA, guys don't play through injuries quite like they used to. many superstar players spend their free time podcasting or streaming, while the Mamba regularly sacrificed sleep to get every additional moment in the gym that he possibly could. In today's era, it's difficult to get guys to give even 80% effort in an all-star game or even regular season games. And oftentimes, they're not even present in the first place, because they chose to, quote, load manage. Then there's Kobe Bryant. Even from the moment he came into the league as a teenager, he valued hard work, and had a level of competitiveness that none of his peers could match. At this point, we've all heard Kobe story after Kobe story, testifying about his commitment, dedication, and relentlessness. And today, I'm bringing you yet another example of that. But this one is basically never talked about. So let me give you the context. The date is October 20th, 2001. The Lakers are currently the defending back-to-back NBA champions. And to say that they were dominating the rest of the league would be a gargantuan understatement. The Lakers were coming off of an NBA championship run where they had won 23 out of their last 24 games, including a 15-1 postseason run, where they swept through an incredibly stacked Western Conference. This postseason performance put the 0-1 Lakers in the conversation of the greatest team in NBA history. So in a sense, they had nothing left to prove, because they had already proved it all. Anyone could look at this situation and expect the Lakers to have a championship hangover. After dominating the entire league with the greatest postseason run ever, it wouldn't be surprising to see them start the 0-1-02 season looking lethargic, content, and uninterested. And you would especially expect that to be the case in the NBA preseason, where the games are literally meaningless to a team's championship chances, and where the statistics and final scores are not even officially tracked, because of just how insignificant they are. So now that we know the context, let's bring our attention back to the game at hand. The Lakers were taking on their rivals, the Sacramento Kings, and it was just a preseason game 10 days before the season was set to officially begin. Although the Lakers were technically considered as the home team for this exhibition game, they were not actually playing in Staples Center, Los Angeles, but rather it was in Las Vegas, Nevada. In this type of situation, many star players wouldn't participate in this game at all, and if they did, they wouldn't be on the court during crunch time. But again, then there's Kobe Bryant. He had a decent start to the game as he was in rhythm and had about 10 points through the first half, in just a one-possession game. Into the third quarter, and Bryant is still playing with a tremendous amount of intensity, as he was scoring, distributing, and was extremely aggressive on the boards. Throughout the third and much of the fourth quarter, Kobe spent a lot of time on the bench, and that's when Sacramento's lead blossomed. It's now late in the fourth quarter, and Shaq is done for the night, but Kobe finds himself still out there on the court, trailing by 15 points with just over 3 minutes left in this inconsequential ballgame. Kobe's solid defense helped force the turnover that led to his breakaway dunk. On the next possession, Kobe gets the rebound off the Kings' missed jumper, and then he takes it to the other end and buries a three, which cuts the lead down to 10. Sacramento then scores on the other end. And then, back on the Lakers' side, Kobe fakes out Doug Christie to create space for yet another three-point jumper. The Lakers fans in the crowd are loving it, as they are certainly getting more than what they paid for in this preseason matchup. A couple possessions later, there's a minute left in the fourth quarter. Lakers are down by 9 points, and Kobe is playing relentless full-court defense, trying to keep their hopes alive. He then forces Peja Stojakovic into a turnover, which I think the refs called as either a travel or a double dribble. The faces on the Kings bench look utterly confused, as they're probably wondering why Kobe wants this so damn much. While just about every other player would have phoned it in by now, looking forward to a night on the town in Vegas, this is the Mamba, drenched in sweat, giving it his all, trying to win a meaningless preseason game simply because this is who he is, and this is what he does. With the ball back to Los Angeles, Kobe then does this.
Forwards start playing 36 to 38 minutes. 51 seconds. Kobe Bryant hits the three. Yes. He's playing like it counts. 105.99, and he has 27.
This third straight clutch three-pointer gave him a total of 27 points on the evening. It was a 6-point game, but then Sacramento scored again, extending the lead to 8. Then Kobe proceeds to bring the ball up.
Allen, Jason Kidd. You say Kobe in the mix here. Now I know we're missing some other guys. Look at this guy. Are you kidding? 30 for Bryant. Stop. He's 2 steps behind the three-point line. And he's making it look like about an 8-foot jump shooting drill.
Crosses up Doug Christie and buries yet another huge 3-point shot, giving him 30 points on the night. There's about 30 seconds left in the game, and the Lakers are down by 5, when this incredible thing happens. The Lakers supporting cast doesn't foul the ball carrier in the back court, to which then Kobe has to intentionally foul in the front court. Everyone else has basically succumbed to defeat, while the Mamba is visibly frustrated at his teammates for not fouling earlier in the possession. I gotta be honest, as a lifelong Lakers fan, it's very rare that I don't know who a Lakers player is. But I must admit, I have no idea who the hell this is talking to Kobe. If you look really closely though, you can read their lips on their interaction. Generic create a player says, "Hey bro, relax, it's just the preseason." To which Kobe responds, "Hey bro, you're not going to be on the team tomorrow." Ultimately, the deficit was too much, and the Lakers did end up losing the game. That meant absolutely nothing to their eventual third straight championship run. Now you might be looking at this topic, wondering why this worthless preseason game was even worth a video. But that is exactly my point. To almost all of us, this is just a meaningless preseason affair. But to Kobe, this was a match worth giving it his all, and he held his teammates to that same standard. To me, there is no greater example of what made Kobe so special than the fact that as a 2-time champion with nothing to prove, he treated a preseason game in Vegas like it was a Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and as if he was yet to win a ring. So there's this interesting and strong narrative that's been circulating in basketball communities for a while at this point. They claim LeBron James is better than Kobe Bryant. And one of the hypotheticals that always comes up is, imagine if a young LeBron had a prime Shaq for his first 8 years, just like Kobe did. One of my favorite YouTubers ever since I started watching NBA YouTube is Dom2K. He makes awesome content, and although Mike Orzemba inspired me to try this YouTube thing out, it was Dom that I wanted to model my content after. I also know the guy. He gave me some advice when I was just starting out my YouTube channel, and once upon a time, we were actually planning on doing a Super Smash Bros. Stream together on our gaming channels. But I think we just got busy and it never panned out. Now let me get to the point of this video though. Dom made a video in 2018 called Why LeBron James is Undoubtedly Greater Than Kobe Bryant. In this video, he had a specific section where he asked, what if Prime Shaq was on LeBron's team in the first 8 years of his career? Take a listen for yourself.
And like anyone else, I've often thought about, well, what if it was LeBron instead of Kobe? What if he'd have been drafted with a top 3 center in history and his career was molded from that? I never get over dramatic and call 8 or 10 rings because I always have questions about how LeBron would have fit with the paint clogging, non-shooting center when he couldn't shoot that well himself for a while. But I don't have any questions about how that duo would have coexisted and reached its potential. It goes deeper than just LeBron sharing the ball more than Kobe because he's a shooting guard and it's not his job. Kobe had it built into his system that sometimes nobody else on the court mattered and he was just going to do it himself. That's part of the killer mentality you always hear about, the Black Mamba, but as I'm going to discuss later, that definitely held him back more than people realize.
Now listen, I only played a small segment of this video, so if you want to hear his thoughts in full, I definitely recommend you go hear him out, and give him a chance to make his whole argument, and go ahead and give him a sub while you're at it. Now here's my thoughts about it. People always assume that LeBron and Shaq together would have been better than Shaq and Kobe, but honestly, I don't get why. If it's a LeBron fan making the point, then I understand why they want to use that narrative to brag about their guy. But outside of that, the logic just doesn't make much sense to me. So let me break it down. Basketball isn't just about getting the most talented players together, putting them in the same jerseys, and watching them win championships. There's been a lot of instances where GMs have tried that and it just didn't work. In my opinion, a young LeBron James simply doesn't mesh as well with Shaq as a young Kobe did. One of the things that worked so well for Kobe and Shaq was their inside-out game. During those days, Shaq would often draw all of the attention to the painted area. The defense would collapse upon him, and that's when he would kick the ball out to his various perimeter shooters. Guys like Rick Fox, Brian Shaw, Derek Fisher, Robert Horry, and yes, sometimes Kobe Bryant as well. Shaq dominated the painted area, while Kobe did his damage from the perimeter. On the other hand, LeBron is lethal when he can attack the basket and finish around the rim. But that's so much harder to do when Shaq is clogging the lane and drawing so many defenders' attention to the painted area. It's easy to help off of Shaq when many of the defensive attention is already around the rim where LeBron is trying to go. The advanced shooting stats actually back this up. Over the course of their careers, Kobe was more efficient than LeBron James between 3 feet and the three-point line. Specifically, in the mid-range, it isn't even close, as Kobe hit 43% of his career shots between 10 to 16 feet, while LeBron shot only 36.6% from that same distance, which is a brutal contrast. Then there's three-point shooting. Eventually, LeBron became a pretty solid three-point shooter. But remember, that wasn't the case earlier in his career, and it was actually considered to be one of his greatest weaknesses. In their first 8 years, Kobe actually had a slightly better three-point percentage. Again, the fit just doesn't work as well from a spacing and ball movement standpoint. Then you have to consider the fact that the Hack-a-Shaq was one of the most frequent strategies against the Lakers during their dynasty days, as they were always fouling Shaq relentlessly in the fourth quarter, forcing him to shoot more free throws. And you know who else is terrible from the free throw line? LeBron James. With this tandem, they would have been constantly breaking free throws together in the most crucial moments of the game. Then there's one other massive element to consider, and that's playoff matchups and guys picking their spots. During the Lakers dynasty days of the early 2000s, Kobe and Shaq had a rhythm to their offense throughout the postseason. Kobe would go off in the Western Conference playoffs, where the bigger bodies were focusing on Shaq. And then, in the NBA Finals, Shaq became a greater focal point for the offense, as Eastern Conference teams had less big bodies to try to contain Shaq. This is an aspect that Kobe and Shaq have talked about numerous times in various interviews, and the numbers back it up. Would LeBron James have been able to hit that switch and take advantage of those Western Conference matchups when he needed to? Who knows? When Kobe went up against their strongest competitor, the San Antonio Spurs, he always came through and performed exceptionally. He led the Lakers in scoring against the San Antonio Spurs in the 2001 playoffs, in the 2002 playoffs, the 2003 playoffs, and in the 2004 playoffs. And in 3 out of those 4 playoff series, he was up against the Defensive Player of the Year candidate, Bruce Bowen. And these were the impressive numbers that Kobe averaged in each of those series. On the other hand, LeBron went up against Bruce Bowen only once in his postseason career, and these were the numbers that he averaged against the All-Defender. If LeBron put up those kind of numbers against San Antonio in the playoffs, then the Lakers likely don't get past that round. So no, for a multitude of reasons, I don't think Shaq and LeBron would have been nearly as successful together as Shaq and Kobe were in their 8-year stretch. And anytime someone tells me that Shaq and LeBron would have been better, I think it boils down to the simple fact that they think LeBron is a better player than Kobe. But I'm not sure if they actually thought through the X's and O's. But hey, I could be wrong. Maybe Dom is right. This video isn't about me calling out a dude for something he said 6 years ago, because again, this is all hypothetical, so who am I to say that he's wrong when he very well may be right? I personally just don't see it, and I wanted to see what you guys thought. Do you think that LeBron would have had more success with Shaq than Kobe did in his first 8 years? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. In the epic history of the NBA, some stories stand out above the rest, not just because of the stats we read in the box score afterwards, but because of how it felt in the moment. They're passed down from generation to generation, from old fans to new fans. And what makes those stories last long after the final buzzer is when the greats who lived it, the athletes themselves, can recall them with perfect clarity, as if they never left the moment at all, either still basking in the glory or drowning in the nightmare. This is one of those stories. And to explain some of the context, let's go back almost 25 years ago, to June 14th, 2000. It was Game 4 of the 2000 NBA Finals. The Lakers were up 2-1 over the Indiana Pacers. The series was hanging in the balance. A 21-year-old Kobe Bryant had missed all of Game 3 and most of Game 2 with a sprained ankle. Now, just days later, he was not only back, but was about to play 47 of the 53 total minutes on what he would later call a quote, throbbing ankle. The Lakers were led, of course, by the most dominant force in the league at the time, Shaquille O'Neal, who was at his absolute apex. He was averaging an insane 38.7 points and 18.7 rebounds per game through the first 3 games of Shaq's first NBA Finals for the Lakers. But in this game, however, it wouldn't be Shaq who finished the story. After the first quarter, the Lakers looked flat, going down 10 points early. Kobe had as many points as he had turnovers. Shaq was only 1 of 5 from the field, and Reggie Miller was already in rhythm with 10 quick points. Indiana led the entire first half, and at halftime they were up 54-51. The Lakers were ice cold from distance as a team, 1 for 7 from 3, and both Shaq and Kobe were in foul trouble with 3 each at the end of the first half. Early in the third quarter, with the Lakers still searching for control, Kobe picked up a potentially killer 4th foul. Most coaches would have pulled him immediately, but Phil Jackson did not, and Kobe made him look like a genius. In the span of just 3 minutes, Kobe doubled his scoring total, jumping from 6 points to 12 points and shaking off the rust of the first half. And by the time the third quarter ended, the Mamba had 16 points and was starting to take control of the tempo. Entering the fourth, the Lakers led for the first time in the game, 80-77. But Reggie Miller, who unusually was 0 of 7 in the fourth quarter through 3 games, decided that Game 4 would be different. He scored 13 points in the fourth quarter alone, hitting 5 of his 6 shots, including 3 for 3 from downtown that would keep Indiana breathing. Shaq, meanwhile, did everything he could to carry the load, dropping 13 points in the final period of regulation, but missing his last 4 free throws down the stretch. Now Kobe was quieter on the stat sheet with just 4 points in the quarter, but he was slowly starting to build towards something much bigger. Now I could sit here and walk you through every second of what happened next, or we can watch a rare moment where 2 legends, one rising and one aging, remember it for themselves. Kobe Bryant shared his memory of this time with Shaq just before we tragically lost him. And Reggie Miller just recently told his side of the story on the All the Smoke podcast. So what you're about to hear is both parts of this iconic story, told by these 2 all-time great players. Take a listen.
My favorite Kobe moment is in the finals in Indiana. I'm like, damn, I let the team down again. And you put your hand on my shoulder and said, don't worry, big fella, I got it. Always knew you was a bad cat, but that moment right there, because you had no fear. I was like,
well, you know, I knew how much it meant to you tactically. I don't think anybody knows this, but yeah, we were filming. I was filming some show the summer before, and Reggie Miller was up there, UCLA.
Kobe and I did a shoot. At the time, you guys remember on MTV, The Real World, the cast, the people that all lived in the house. This is when reality TV was just starting. And this was a chance, he and I, this is before we made it to the finals.
And I said, okay, they got a really good team in Indiana. We might see these guys. And I said, let's play one-on-one.
Gail D'Agostino, who, she worked with both of us. And she came to me and she's like, hey, I'm just letting you know, Kobe's gonna wanna play you one-on-one. I'm at the height of mine. He's just, this is his second or third year maybe, second year.
and we played one-on-one, I proceeded to really measure him.
So we're on the court. He's like, teach me that step back.
And see what he liked to do defensively, see where he moved, see where he was weak at, what I could exploit.
Like, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the feet, the knees? Like, how do you do it going left, and how are you doing it right? Like, don't they close? So I'm out there teaching them and doing all this. Fast forward to the finals.
I file out.
We're thinking, we about ready to tie this thing up. They had won the first two in Staples. We won game 3. We're about ready to tie this thing up.
And so when that happened in the finals, we were here, I knew what I had. I knew what I could take. I knew what he would give me. And it was just a matter of just measuring him and going to work.
Damn Kobe Bryant turned into, and not only did he turn into the reincarnation of MJ, that same that I was teaching him, those step backs.
He hit that 3, yeah.
He's hitting it on me. Wah, wah.
So it was a thought-out attack for him.
This dude was prepping for this moment 3 years ago. He is using this, what I taught him, on me and us. They win that game, they win the series in 6.
Now, in the midst of all this drama, a crucial detail from this game has been largely forgotten. On the last possession of the game, a terrible foul called on Rick Fox, occurring before the ball was even inbounded, gifted Indiana a technical free throw, and possession with 5 seconds remaining. A successful three-pointer would now win this game, and Indiana had the NBA's most lethal three-point shooter ever at this point in time. Reggie Miller, with the weight of the game on his shoulders, managed to create a decent look from the right wing. An impressive feat considering everyone in the arena knew the ball was destined for him. The shot, sadly for Miller, clanked off the back iron. This near miss, the what could have been, must have been a heavy burden for Miller to bear for all these years. And this was his one and only opportunity in the NBA Finals. If luck is really what happens when preparation meets opportunity, then in Game 4 of the 2000 NBA Finals, Kobe Bryant was one of the luckiest men alive. But it wasn't just random. It wasn't just a fluke. Looking back, it all makes sense. The way Kobe carried himself, the confidence in his eyes, the way he rose up and hit that first shot over Reggie Miller, you could just tell he knew. He knew he was the most prepared player on the court. He knew this moment might come when he was with Reggie at UCLA years before. And when it finally did, under the bright lights of the NBA Finals, Kobe didn't hesitate. He was ready. Heading into the summer of 2004, the Lakers were coming off of a tumultuous season that had championship expectations, yet ended in defeat on the game's biggest stage. Shaq and Kobe's personal beef had grown sour to the point of no return, and with the diesel aging, the front office found themselves in a position where they had to choose one star or the other. Ultimately, they traded the 32-year-old Shaquille O'Neal to the Miami Heat, while Kobe was signed to a 7-year, $136 million contract. Former All-Stars like Karl Malone and Gary Payton also left Los Angeles, which meant that Kobe was left with a roster with below-average talent. The newly acquired Lamar Odom was the best supporting piece that the Mamba had, and many writers and analysts in Los Angeles were saying that Odom was going to be the Scottie Pippen to Kobe's Michael Jordan. Obviously, those were shoes way too big for him to fill, and the Lakers would struggle out of the gates. Former NBA champion head coach Rudy Tomjanovich was hired to be the replacement head coach of Phil Jackson, and was given a 5-year, $30 million contract. He barely saw any of that time though, as Rudy decided to resign from the team only 43 games into the season due to his mental and physical exhaustion. Los Angeles was decent with Rudy as they started the year with a 24-19 record, but they absolutely imploded after he left, as they closed out the rest of the season with a 10-29 record, falling well short of the playoff picture. Kobe clearly didn't have the help he needed, and Los Angeles finished as one of the worst teams defensively. Regardless of the subpar supporting cast, the narrative was now firmly established among the media that Kobe could never win a championship ring without Shaquille O'Neal. Over the next 2 seasons, Kobe started making history on an individual level, as he dropped 81 points in a game against the Raptors, 62 points in 3 quarters versus the Mavericks, and 4 straight 50-point games. The thing is, the supporting cast was still awful, as below-average players like Chris Mim, Kwame Brown, Luke Walton, and Smush Parker were consistently in the starting rotation. Regardless of the lack of legitimate support, Kobe's MVP caliber performances willed the Lakers to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, but in both years, they were eliminated out of the first round by the Phoenix Suns. This was an extremely rare low moment for the Lakers franchise, as their season ended in the first round or worse 3 years in a row. Kobe was beyond frustrated and was extremely critical of not only his teammates, but of the Lakers' upper management. He was completely done carrying the organization on his back, so Bryant then decided to publicly demand a trade. The narrative that he couldn't win without Shaq was now more prominent than ever before, and even Los Angeles locals like Bill Plaschke from the LA Times was preaching this narrative as well.
Bill, have the Lakers reached a point of no return with Kobe Bryant?
Well, let's see. He's ripped the general manager. He's ripped the owner. He's ripped other players. He's basically ripped the city by saying he don't want to play here. I think they've reached a point of no return. Hello, Lakers, trade him now. It's beyond the point of no return. How much abuse can they take from one guy? And at what point does his value on the court be offset by how much a huge distraction he is off the court, and the fact that even on the court they can't win with him? They've already shown it. They cannot win with him. He doesn't make players around him better. Trade him now. Maybe have a chance to rebuild. The Lakers are about winning. They've never been about selfishness. They've never been about one person. They've always been about a team, about winning. Get rid of him now because you can't win with him.
Fortunately for LA fans, the Lakers management didn't take Bill's advice and decided to keep the Mamba against his will. Regardless, a lot of Laker fans were actually on Plaschke's side and was sick of Bryant's drama and displeasure with the organization. So when the Lakers' 07-08 season finally began, the fans let Kobe hear it, and Staples Center was booing Kobe during player introductions. I repeat, the Staples Center crowd in Los Angeles was booing their own superstar, Kobe Bryant, who had helped them win 3 championships up to that point. Kobe went on to score 45 points in that game, but the Lakers still lost to Houston, which basically continued the theme of the previous 3 seasons. The once prestigious Lakers organization was now being seen as a joke of a franchise, as everyone on the team now seemed at odds with each other, and even the fans were at odds with the superstar that they paid to watch. Even though management decided to keep Kobe for now, it only seemed as if it was a matter of time before the Mamba left in free agency when his contract eventually expired. Nearly every glimmer of hope within the Lakers organization was immediately dashed to pieces. And another example of this was their young emerging center Andrew Bynum, who suffered a season-ending knee injury against the Grizzlies just 35 games into the year. It appeared as if another depressing conclusion to the season was approaching. Through all the constant tension and drama in Los Angeles, the Lakers managed to start the year with a 29-16 record, good enough for the 5th seed in the Western Conference. Regardless of the fact that they were destined for the playoffs, the feeling among basketball circles remained the same, that Kobe and the Lakers were on their way to an early playoff exit, and the trade demands would heat up yet again. This is when the move finally happened that changed the course of Bryant's career, the Lakers' future, and the history of basketball. Jerry West and Mitch Kupchak of the Lakers front office achieved one of the greatest midseason basketball trades of all time. The Lakers acquired the all-star big man Pau Gasol from the Memphis Grizzlies in exchange for Kwame Brown, Javaris Crittenton, Aaron McKie, and the draft rights to Marc Gasol. This move sent shockwaves throughout the league, as the Lakers went instantly from an expected first-round exit to a contender in the Western Conference. Many people believed this acquisition would lead to great things for Los Angeles, but before everyone was convinced, Gasol had to be seen on the floor with the rest of his new squad. The first impression was about as strong as it could have been. On February 5, 2008, Gasol made his Laker debut in a matchup against the New Jersey Nets. He completely controlled the game with 24 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists on 67% shooting. The play on the court was beautiful to witness, as the Lakers veterans gelled together as if they had been teammates for years. But on an individual level, Kobe had a horrible game, as he was dealing with an injured finger and only scored 6 points on 3 of 13 shooting from the field and 7 turnovers. You wouldn't know it though if I hadn't told you, as the Lakers won the game comfortably 105-90. Nobody was happier with the outcome and the state of the team than the player who struggled the most, Kobe Bryant. In the post-game interview, Bryant was asked about his thoughts on his new co-star, and this is what he had to say.
Kobe, how nice a feeling is it to know that you can score 6 points and still have a victory come out?
You have no idea. Just make the game so much easier. We had some weapons before. Now we just added a huge one to the team, and we get Big Bynum back. There's a God. There is a God.
Kobe proclaiming that there is indeed a God indicates that he understood the magnitude of the acquisition. The energy completely changed around the Lakers organization overnight, as the feeling of impending despair shifted to hope and optimism. Obviously, Kobe's stance on his trade request was revisited after Powell was in LA, and when asked if the Gasol acquisition strengthened his desire to stay in LA, Kobe responded with a smirk on his face, saying this.
It doesn't hurt. Absolutely not.
To say that Powell was pivotal to the Lakers' success from that point on would be a massive understatement. Even though Gasol was naturally a power forward, he filled the role of the injured Andrew Bynum at the center position throughout the 2008 season. Ultimately, the Lakers lost the 2008 NBA Finals in 6 games to the Boston Celtics, but Gasol would only continue to be an anchor for the team for their next 2 seasons. In the 2008-09 season, Andrew Bynum once again went down with a devastating knee injury, which again moved Gasol to the center position for the majority of the season. In that postseason, Powell averaged 18 points and 11 rebounds on a remarkably efficient 58% shooting from the field. Next year's playoffs was more of the same, and in the NBA Finals matchup against the Boston Celtics, Powell led all players in rebounds and blocks and was second overall in scoring. In the hard-fought 7th game, Gasol dropped 19 points, 18 rebounds, and 4 assists. Not only was he crucial to winning that decisive game, but many people think he deserved the Finals MVP for his contribution in that series. Thanks to his efforts, the Lakers won the NBA championship in back-to-back seasons. Simply put, if it wasn't for Gasol, Kobe doesn't have any rings without Shaq, forever tarnishing his legacy. If it wasn't for Gasol, the Lakers likely never get out of that awful post-Shaq era, which would have been a huge hit to the Lakers' brand and reputation. This is why the Lakers retired his jersey, because he saved the franchise from the dark depths of mediocrity and restored the team to the glory that they've become so accustomed to. Anyone who's been an NBA fan for a long time has several shots they can look back on and say, man, I wish that shot went in. Maybe it involved your favorite team, your favorite player, or it just would have made a really sick highlight. Regardless, I know you've got them and I've got them in the back of our minds. Today, I'm talking about the shot that I wished had gone in. And please, let me know in the comments section below what are some of your choices. Now this is the one that cuts the deepest for me personally. It's Robert Horry's missed 3-pointer in Game 5 of the 2003 Western Conference Semifinals. The context is key in this scenario. The Lakers had just won 3 straight NBA championships and were trying to accomplish something that even Michael Jordan's Bulls had never done, which was win a 4th straight NBA title. Lakers fans really wanted to win it this year specifically, because this is the year that we had lost our longtime local commentator, Chick Hearn, who in a way was the voice of the organization. Even Kobe himself echoed this sentiment after they just eliminated the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round.
Yeah, Kobe, it seems like every year that I'm thinking back at championships prior to you guys, not even just the Lakers. There's one incident that sparks you and says, it gets that fiery lit when you're trying to go back to back or you're trying to be three-peat. What's that spark this year that make you say, you know what, I'm not complacent?
History. This is our chance to make history. And we obviously want to win it for Chick Hearn. We haven't forgot about him at all. Making history and winning one for Chick, that's those are big motivating factors for us.
Now, in the last few playoff runs, Robert Horry had made clutch game-winning baskets to seal away pivotal victories for Los Angeles. At this point, he was doing it so regularly that it was basically expected by all of his teammates. Now, Game 5 was in San Antonio. The series was tied at 2 games apiece. This was a crucial game, but the Lakers were trailing by as many as 25 points, and the deficit was 17 points with less than 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But that's when Kobe Bryant absolutely erupted and took over the game just when his team needed it. In my opinion, this was the year where Kobe had finally surpassed Shaquille O'Neal as the best player on the team, and in this instance, he was proving it on the court. Some of the shots he was hitting were insane, even by his standards. Unfortunately, he wouldn't get the last laugh, because on the Lakers' final possession, they were down by 2 points. Kobe successfully draws the double team, and finds the one guy open that San Antonio would have to be crazy to leave open. Of course, it's Robert Horry. He catches the pass and the shot is in and out. It was about as close to going down as it possibly could have been. Due to this miss, the Spurs won the game, as the Lakers were in utter shock. Since then, several Laker players have talked about how demoralizing this miss was. Some of them even said that they saw the miss as a sign that they were not meant to win the championship that year. When Game 6 happened, it was obvious that this was the case, as the Lakers lacked energy and belief. They were destroyed in their own building, 110-82. If Horry had made that shot, then the Lakers win Game 5, and this performance from Kobe is immortalized in basketball lore. The Lakers would have had their confidence intact, and likely win one of the 2 final games to advance. San Antonio was the best team that year, as they went on to win the championship. But if the Lakers had beaten them, then I believe they would have gone on to be the champions instead. Now think about this. In this scenario, Kobe finishes his career with 6 championship rings. 1 more than Magic Johnson, 1 more than Tim Duncan, and an equal amount to Michael Jordan. But instead, the Lakers were eliminated in an ugly fashion, while we had to watch Kobe Bryant and Derek Fisher crying on the sidelines. It was brutal. What made it all even worse was the fact that Big Shot Bob left the Lakers in the offseason and joined this Spurs team that he just failed to make the shot against. And then he went on to hit big playoff shots with them instead. It just added insult to injury. Now think about it. If that shot had went down in Game 5, then it definitely improves Kobe's legacy and Shaq's legacy while changing Lakers history and basketball history as a whole, as the Lakers would be the only team since the NBA merger to win 4 straight titles. As the saying goes, you win some and you lose some, but this one definitely stung more than most. Alright, so today we're doing something a little bit different, because I don't know what's in the water amongst the NBA media and amongst former NBA players, but it feels like everybody is making super wild comments lately. It's been really hilarious to see my fellow old head basketball channels freaking out covering all of this. And honestly, I've been meaning to too. Tracy McGrady's been making crazy comments, Gilbert Arenas said some crazy stuff, LeBron said some stuff, Dwayne Wade said some stuff, and so on. The thing is, I typically make scripted, edited videos that take a lot of time, so it's just really happening too fast to cover each and every one in a video. So instead, I've decided to do something different today. And basically, we're gonna watch all of these comments together, and then I'm gonna react to it after I listen to it. That way, you'll get my most genuine and raw reaction, but that also means we can cover a lot in a short amount of time. This video is probably going to get copyrighted, but every once in a while that's alright. At least I'll be able to give you guys my thoughts on all of these matters.
A ring is a team accomplishment. Right. I don't know where it started, it's just it's a long conversation, especially when it comes to me individually. I don't know why it's discussed so much in our sport. You tell me, Allen Iverson and Charles Barkley and Steve Nash, our wasn't unbelievable. Like, oh, they can't be talked about or discussed with these guys just because this guy won 1 ring or won 2 rings or won, like, It's just weird to me. It's like saying Peyton Manning can't be in the same room with Brady or Mahomes because he only has one ring. Barry Bonds never won a World Series. So. You can't sit here and tell me that he's not the greatest baseball player to ever touch a bat.
Alright, so we just listened to LeBron's thoughts, and let me start this off by saying that I don't completely disagree with him, but I also don't completely agree with him. Yes, rings are not the be-all, end-all, because at the end of the day, like he said, it is a team accomplishment, and how each individual player performs really matters. For example, Jerry West was 1-8 in the NBA Finals, but he was called Mr. Clutch for a reason, and the reason is because when the playoffs came around, he individually did his job. He was almost always performing his best when it mattered the most. The problem is that the Celtics were just so stacked overall that he could average 37 points over the course of a finals series and be named the finals MVP while losing that series, just because championships are not a one-man job. So I get it, there's nuance to this. But I don't get the vibe that that's what LeBron is saying. He makes it sound like rings shouldn't be a part of the equation at all. And that to me is wild and flat out ridiculous. First off, it's also a contradiction to what LeBron has said in the past. Because remember, he called himself the GOAT specifically because he won the championship in 2016 over the Golden State Warriors. So unless he's changed his mind since then, he's contradicting his own stance in this instance. Listen, at the beginning of the year, before the opening tip has even happened, everybody is focused on winning an NBA championship. The players, the coaches, the executives, the fans. That's what everyone wants. That's the goal that everyone is pushing for. So to act like this should have no value in how we grade players is flat out ridiculous. Because yes, it is a team accomplishment. But since we're looking at LeBron, let's use LeBron as an example. In the 2011 NBA Finals, LeBron would have won the championship over the Dallas Mavericks if he didn't average 17 points per game over that series. This is the biggest reason why I personally see Michael Jordan as the greatest player of all time. It's not just because he was 6-0 in the NBA Finals, it was because of how he performed in those 6 Finals appearances. He was almost breaking records every single time he made it to the Finals. Yes, it is a team accomplishment, but how you, as the leader, as the superstar, perform when it matters the most can determine whether or not your team wins a championship. So to act like that shouldn't be a part of the equation is just asinine. It's not the end-all be-all. It's not the only thing we look at. Because again, if you look at some of my all-time rankings, I do have certain players who have less rings over players who have more rings. Because again, it's about that nuance. But let's not try to deem it worthless in this conversation.
Get him, Gil.
You're free. I'm here.
What he's saying is actually correct. Like, when did ring culture become a thing, right? When you talk about a team award, something that a structure needs to win, does not boost you in front of individual accomplishments. And when you used Kobe, would frowned upon what LeBron said, okay. I would disagree with that.
Got you.
I would disagree with that.
I remember what I said there.
In real time, Kobe had 3 rings. Y'all wasn't treating him like a 3-ring player. You was treating him like a sidekick. He was considered a sidekick. He was considered a Robin. He was considered the next Pippen. In 2002, with 3 rings, we were still comparing T-Mac. Who was better in the league? You couldn't convince the NBA down the middle who was better. So
between
T-Mac and Kobe.
Totally true.
Right? So if you're sitting there with 3 rings and you're still being compared to someone who doesn't have rings, what do you think happened? I need individual accomplishments. Can you please get rid of Shaq? Right? Because if it was about rings, there was no reason for the fallout with him and Shaq. The fallout was about you only respect the driver of the car. No one respects the passenger of rings. Right? There's no one says it, but the one who's leading the one who's leading the team, that's the gold member right there. That ring counts. The second option ring, that's silver when no one respects it.
Okay, all right. I gotta stop Gilbert Arenas because these are just some horrible takes. First of all, we gotta reject his stupid premise. Saying nobody respects or appreciates the second guy in command is just ridiculous. So was the leader of the team literally the only guy who receives any credit for winning championships? Absolutely not. The second best guy up gets a ton of credit for what he did winning a championship. Who was number one for the Showtime Lakers? Probably Magic the majority of the time. Do we not give credit to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for all the championships he won with Magic? Of course we do. Do we not give credit to Scottie Pippen for his 6 championships? Of course we do. We always mention Scottie among the greatest players in NBA history. But if he didn't have Michael Jordan, he doesn't have 6 championships, and he's not in that conversation. But because Scottie was a big help in winning those rings, he's still in that conversation. We give him his respect. There's also some egregious revisionist history going on here. Nobody was ever calling Kobe Bryant the next Scottie Pippen. That just didn't happen. I've been seeing tons of channels putting in clips over and over again from 2000 to 2003 where people were constantly calling Kobe the next Michael Jordan. And this is just dishonest. This is the biggest reason why I don't like Gilbert Arenas as an analyst, because he's just extremely dishonest. This is revisionist history. The only reason he was considered a sidekick at times was because Shaq was so damn incredible. But that didn't make Kobe less. It was a Batman and Nightwing situation. He was not a Scottie Pippen Robin. Scottie Pippen was never the 30 points per game scorer that Kobe Bryant was when he was with Shaq. Scottie Pippen was never the closer for the Chicago Bulls like Kobe was. Year in and year out, Kobe Bryant was right there in first or second place for the league leaders in fourth quarter points per game. That is something that Scottie could only dream of, as Michael was the guy who was always taking over late in games. This is just complete and utter nonsense from Arenas, and it's easy to disprove.
Got it. What happens is when we diminish the likes of the other players, I'll tell you where it really affects people like athletes, because then everybody out there starts easily diminishing the talented players.
Right.
So you got people out there who are fans. When we love fans, we got respect for it. Discounting the greatness of the individual talent, calling people bums because they didn't live up to the narrative that the media has set on what defines greatness as greatness.
No disagreement there.
All right, I gotta stop Jason Williams here real quick. The only people who call guys bums because they don't have championship rings are 8-year-olds on Twitter. That is ridiculous. Let's not give that any weight. We are able to recognize that guys were great or guys were talented even if they didn't have a championship ring. For goodness sake, how often do we give our flowers to Allen Iverson? How often do people say that he's one of the top 5 most influential players in NBA history, regardless of the fact that he didn't win a championship ring? He only got 1 win in the NBA Finals, but it was so amazing and it was so iconic that we were willing to immortalize him for it. This narrative and this idea that we only give love and respect to guys who have championships is total BS. Yes, guys with rings are celebrated more, as they should be, but it doesn't mean that all the other guys are treated as bums and never given their respect.
What defines greatness? Is it the championship?
That's one of the elements.
I mean,
in some cases, yeah.
I don't see anything he said wrong. I didn't see your response, but for me, we have too many talented players that come through this league that are championship worthy. What I mean by that, if you take them off a team that is a championship quality team, replace me with Kobe with Shaq. I don't win a championship. You don't think I could carry the Lakers to a championship? Like, I've never had the opportunity.
Correct.
I felt like if I was put in that position to win a championship, I damn sure would show up and do what I do in the playoffs to elevate my team to that level. I just never had the chance. So do I get diminished because I never won a championship?
Right.
Alright, so I gotta admit, I actually don't hate what Tracy McGrady said as much as a lot of people do. But there is some parts that are a little bit ridiculous and we'll get into that. But first let's start off what I don't hate. I really don't mind the fact that he said, I'm not gonna win a championship. He didn't say he would be equally successful to Kobe Bryant, which is what everybody is acting like he said. He said, I'm not gonna win a championship. If Kobe got 3 with Shaq, then yeah, I think that Tracy McGrady would get at least 1. Specifically, in the 2000 to 2001 season, where the Lakers went 15-1 in the NBA playoffs. And I get it, Kobe Bryant was incredible throughout those playoffs. The point I'm making is that Shaq was so dominant, there was an array of incredible shooters on that supporting cast, that I do think the combination of Tracy and Shaq in 2001 would have won 1 championship. And to then get on Tracy and ridicule him and say that he wouldn't have won 3, to me seems silly because that's not what he said. So why should I make an argument against it? The only thing I had a problem with is that Tracy said he never had an opportunity. And I do recognize that overall, Kobe Bryant had a better supporting cast than Tracy McGrady did throughout his career. But there's reasons that McGrady didn't have many opportunities. For example, you had Vince Carter in his prime.
We had a good thing, you stupid son of a bitch. You just had to be the man.
You had to go to Orlando. You had to make more money. You had the setup to be a year in and year out contender in the Eastern Conference, the weaker conference at the time. You could have been going to the finals year after year, as Vinsanity and T-Mac would have been one of the greatest duos we've ever seen. But you left that because you had to be the man. He didn't have a tremendous amount of support in Orlando, but again, he chose to sign there. And him speaking so confidently about winning a championship is pretty rich coming from a player who couldn't make it out of the first round for like 7 straight seasons. I get you don't have the most talented supporting cast, but you can't make it out of the first round one time? I still remember that interview with Stephen A. Smith way long ago, when he was on the verge of yet another Game 7.
You don't consider yourself an underdog this year, do you?
I don't consider myself an underdog, not at all.
So if you don't
if I don't make it out of the first round this year, it'll be a disappointment on my part.
When you say on your part, what do you mean by that?
Meaning, I feel that this is my team. How far we go is riding on my shoulders. It's on me. If we don't get out of the first round, it's on me.
Wait a minute.
If we don't get out of the first round this year, it's on me.
Now, he's making it seem like it's on everybody but him. And then, when you were on the Houston Rockets, and you were playing alongside of Ron Artest and Yao Ming and Shane Battier and a whole bunch of guys that were capable of winning, you were getting injured year in and year out. And that's unfortunate, and that sucks. But being healthy when it all matters is part of winning a championship. Nobody else should be taking the blame for that. So I love T-Mac, and I do wish he would have had more talent around him throughout the vast majority of his career. But some of these comments are just flat out wild and are completely neglecting his own responsibilities. The last thing I want to say about this panel is that it's really hilarious that they're having a conversation about ring culture with 3 guys who never won a championship ring. What the hell do you think they're gonna say? Of course they're justifying not having a ring and saying that they should still be in that conversation because they're coping. That's what happens when you're a guy who wanted to win but couldn't win. That's how it works. It's like asking a bunch of high school dropouts about the value of having a college education. What do you think they're gonna say? So honestly, I would have appreciated it if ESPN and all of their wisdom would have just got one guy on this panel who did in fact win some championship rings, just to add a little bit of perspective. Alright, so now I'm towards the end of the video and I'm seeing that this reaction and all my thoughts is getting quite long. I wanted to react to what Dwayne Wade said, but I think I'll just do that in a part 2. So guys, I had a lot of thoughts. Clearly I got worked up about this, but I really just hate the fact that there's an attack on winning. Winning has always been the most important thing on how we view the greats, because it's the most valuable thing in the entire sport. And for someone like LeBron James to say, I don't know what started all this, dude, it's been this way forever. Why do you think Bill Russell was the guy winning MVP year in and year out, even though Wilt Chamberlain was averaging 40 to 50 points per game? Because the guys they were competing against in the league at that time, who were the voters, knew what style and what focus was leading to winning basketball. They knew which player was winning championships. That's what mattered even in the 1960s. And up until this point, that has always been the most valuable thing. But now, all of a sudden, a bunch of guys want to shake up the conventional way of thinking, and honestly, I think it's because it benefits them. Let me start off this video by acknowledging the purple and gold elephant in the room. I am a lifelong Lakers fan, and I have made it very clear numerous times on my channel that Kobe Bryant is my favorite player of all time. So although I don't think I'm being biased with this opinion, it's still entirely possible. Maybe it's my own subconscious bias that's inspiring me to get this point across. But again, I don't think so. On this channel, in front of thousands of listeners, I've been critical of Kobe numerous times. For example, I believe his selfish Finals MVP aspirations was the biggest reason the Lakers lost in the 2004 NBA Finals. I believe the Lakers making Kobe the highest paid player in the league after he tore his Achilles and was his mid-30s was one of the dumbest decisions the organization has ever made. And I also believe that Kobe's final 3 seasons after his Achilles tear was some of the ugliest basketball I have ever seen from a superstar player, as he shot only 36.6% in those last 3 seasons, while being among the league leaders in shot attempts per game. Fortunately, his 60-point farewell game kinda washed away the memory of just how bad those final 3 seasons were. So like I said before, although Kobe Bryant is my favorite player of all time, I at least try to be as objective as possible when talking about the game of basketball in general. So now for the topic at hand. Many people, and maybe even the majority of people who watch basketball, believe that Kobe Bryant quit on his team in Game 7 of the first round in the 2006 playoffs against the Phoenix Suns. The reason people believe this is because Kobe was publicly frustrated with the Lakers organization at this time, due to the lack of a solid supporting cast. Heading into the second half of Game 7, the Lakers were down by 15 points, and in the second half, Kobe was extremely passive and seemed reluctant to shoot the ball. After taking 13 shots in the first half, Kobe only took a total of 3 shots in the second half, and the Lakers ended up losing the deciding 7th game by a whopping 31 points. Given the fact that Kobe was a natural volume shooter, it seemed incredibly out of character for him to be so passive in the second half of a crucial game. So because of this, a narrative was firmly established that Kobe quit on his team in Game 7 of those playoffs, and it's a narrative that still regularly circulates in basketball discussions to this very day. Now for myself personally, I don't believe this narrative in the slightest, and I never have for that matter. As someone who watched every Laker game that season, I believe there is a legitimate reason why things played out the way that they did, but it requires the full context of that season. So if there's any video of mine that you watch till the very end, I ask that you would make it this one. So let's get into it. Like I mentioned before, back in my teenage years, I religiously watched every single Laker game. And I mean every single Laker game. If people ask me to go out to dinner, sorry, I can't. There's a Laker game tonight. Friends invited me to a youth group event, sorry, I can't. There's a Laker game tonight. The girl I had a crush on invited me to her place. I would love to tomorrow, but there's a Laker game tonight. So with that being said, I vividly remember the themes and the talking points throughout that season. One of the themes was this: when Kobe wasn't scoring as much and he got his teammates involved, the Lakers tended to win games more often. This was a constant talking point during the Lakers pregame telecasts. Back then, on the Lakers local broadcast on Fox Sports Net, they had a pregame segment called Philosophy 101. It was a consistent pregame event where the Lakers head coach Phil Jackson was being interviewed by Bill McDonald. Before, he was the Lakers' official play-by-play commentator. Throughout the season, Phil was constantly preaching about the Lakers' need to get Kobe's teammates going as well. Although Kobe averaged 35.4 points per game that season, Phil Jackson understood that the Lakers' best recipe for success was to play a free-flowing team game. And to be honest, this has always been a major coaching tactic throughout Phil Jackson's career, as the triangle offense is one that requires plenty of ball movement, and one player constantly scoring in isolation plays is a disruption to that offense. In 1989, when Phil Jackson replaced Doug Collins as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, he asked Michael Jordan to decrease his scoring and share the basketball more in order to win more basketball games. In 2003, when Kobe scored 40 points in 9 straight games, Phil asked Kobe to put an end to that streak so they could get Shaquille O'Neal more involved in the offense. And again, in 2006, Phil was constantly telling Kobe that he needed to trust his teammates more in order for them to be successful. And you know what? Based on the evidence we have from the Lakers' 05 to 06 season, Phil Jackson was right. When it came to Kobe's scoring, there was a sweet spot for the Lakers that season. Phil Jackson knew this, the Lakers broadcast crew knew this, and I, as a frequently spectating Lakers fan, came to learn this. In the 05 to 06 regular season, in games where Kobe scored 27 to 34 points, the Lakers had a remarkable 15-3 record. This was a Lakers team that finished as a 7th seed in the NBA playoffs. Yet when Kobe was scoring in this points range, the Lakers were winning at the rate of a first-seeded team. Now on the other hand, in games where Kobe scored 35 to 42 points, the Lakers had a disappointing 13-15 record. That's quite the contrast between the two different approaches. The coaching staff understood that when the Lakers played a natural flowing team game, they were pretty successful. But when it was all about isolation plays in the Kobe show, they were struggling just to be a team above 500. Obviously, if Kobe's going to score 81 points or 62 points in just 3 quarters, the Lakers are going to win those games. But if Kobe is going to have a game where he scores merely 40 points, then it would have been better for him to score only 30 while keeping his teammates involved. This wasn't just a theme of the Lakers' regular season, but this theme carried over into the playoffs against the Phoenix Suns. After the first 4 games in this playoff series, the Lakers had a commanding 3-1 lead over Phoenix. The thing is, Kobe wasn't looking to score very much as the Lakers were dominating the Suns, as he averaged only 23 points per game over the course of the first 4 games. Now games 5 and 6 were a totally different approach. In those games, Kobe averaged a ridiculously efficient 39.5 points per game. In those 2 games, he was hitting 57.7% of his shots, and 50% from 3-point range. Yet the Lakers still lost both of those games. Up to the point of Game 7, this theme had been consistent throughout the entirety of the season. The Lakers coaching staff knew this, and Kobe Bryant knew this. When Game 7 started, Kobe continued his scoring onslaught, trying to will his team to the second round with his scoring ability. There was only one problem though. At the end of the first half, Kobe had 23 points on 61.5% shooting, yet his Lakers were still losing by 15 points. At this pace, with this current tactic, Kobe is going to have another game where he scores over 40 points, but his Lakers are going to lose by 30. Kobe's shoot first, pass second strategy wasn't working. It didn't work throughout the regular season, it didn't work in games 5 and 6, and it certainly wasn't working in the first half of Game 7. So when Kobe came out in the second half of Game 7 looking to pass the ball, I didn't see a player who was quitting on his team by being passive. No, I saw a player who knew that what he was doing up to this point wasn't working, so he tried the exact opposite. I saw a Kobe who was desperately trying to get his teammates going because he knew that it was the only shot he had at defeating the Phoenix Suns. Now obviously, this tactic didn't work either, as Kobe's teammates only shot 33.3% from the field in the second half, and the Lakers ended up losing by 31 points. Now here's the thing, this wasn't just my observation after watching Game 7, but this is pretty close to Phil Jackson's and Kobe Bryant's explanation of what actually happened. Take a listen.
Well, we wanted to get back in the ball game. We're running stuff through other guys. Nash was a little bit banged up. We're trying to, work at that end of it, trying to go inside to Lamar, get an inside-out game, and Kobe just sat on that game and let the other things happen.
When your approach to the second half, you only took a couple of shots.
Well, if we're going to get back in this type of a game, we have to have everybody contributing. In the first half, started, picking it up offensively just to keep us in the hunt. In the second half, when we're going to get back in these type of games, everybody starts getting in the rhythm. Then everybody gets pumped up about the game. It just didn't happen for us.
So now you're trying to tell me that Kobe freaking Bryant, one of the most driven, hardworking, and competitive athletes in human history, just laid over and accepted defeat? Are you serious? Kobe is one of the last people that I could ever envision doing that, based on his personality and his reputation. Guys like that don't just lay over and quit due to pettiness. For me, it's way harder to believe that a highly competitive person made a complete out-of-character action by quitting on his team than it is for me to believe that Kobe being passive was his desperate attempt to give his team a chance at winning the game. But at the end of the day, that's just my thoughts. What are yours? This is a topic I've wanted to tackle for a while because it's something that has people pretty divided whenever it comes up. And as one of the ultimate Kobe Bryant fans who watched basically the entirety of his basketball career, I thought I should give my perspective on it as well. Now, when it comes to Kobe's abilities as an offensive player, there isn't a tremendous amount to be debated. Simply put, he's one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. He's currently 4th on the NBA's all-time scoring list. He has the 2nd greatest scoring performance of all time, which is when he dropped 81 points on the Raptors. And he has the longest streak of 40-point games and 50-point games by anyone not named Wilt Chamberlain. If you ask me personally, I don't think Kobe was the greatest scorer in NBA history, but I do believe he was the most impressive scorer of all time, as no one could consistently make the insanely difficult shots that he could make on a regular basis. To me, this aspect of Kobe's legacy is unwavering, and most people tend to agree that he's one of the greatest scorers of all time. But then there's the other side of the court, and this is where things get a bit more shaky. If I asked you if Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest defensive players in NBA history, what would your answer be? He certainly has the reputation of being a great defensive player, and in numerous instances, Kobe displayed what he was capable of on that end of the court. To me, the greatest example of Kobe's tenacity and defensive excellence was when he led the Redeem team in the 2008 Summer Olympics. Kobe understood full well that with that stacked roster of offensive superstars, he wouldn't need to be as aggressive offensively, and instead decided to focus his energy on the defensive end of the court. That summer, he accepted the assignment of shutting down the best player on the opposing teams. And Kobe's Olympic teammates have spoken at length about how his mindset and leadership motivated the team defensively, which helped them secure the gold. At least in that time frame, Kobe was absolutely elite defensively, as he demonstrated his lockdown abilities when he set his mind to it. But that begs the question, did Kobe always set his mind on being a lockdown defensive player? Here's something to consider. In the history of the NBA, Kobe is tied for the most first-team all-defensive selections with a total of 9. The players he is tied with are Michael Jordan, Kevin Garnett, and Gary Payton. So based on that, some may consider him on the same level as those other defensive players. Well, the thing is, of the players in that group, Kobe is the only player who never won the Defensive Player of the Year award. Jordan won the award in 1988, Gary Payton won it in 1996, and Kevin Garnett won it in 2008. In fact, Kobe never finished higher than 3rd overall in the DPOY race, and other than that single season in 2000, he never finished higher than 5th. Now, some bring up the point that the all-defensive selections and the DPOY award is all based on voting by the media. So in a sense, there's no objective truth to a player being considered as better or worse based on those awards, because it all comes down to their opinions. While there is some truth to that point, you also have to consider the aspects that are less about opinions and more about the bottom line. For example, defensive statistics. Given how Jordan and Kobe have the same amount of first-team all-defensive selections, and Kobe actually has more defensive selections overall, let's focus a bit on a comparison between these two defensively, seeing how they both play at the same position and with similar styles. Jordan specialized as a defensive pickpocket. He was good at reading defenses and jumping the passing lanes. With his massive hands and with his tremendous strength, he was also very good at stripping the ball from the opposing ball handler. In Jordan's first 9 seasons before his retirement in 1993, he didn't have a single season where he didn't average at least 2 steals per game. In 3 of those seasons, he actually led the league in steals per game. On the other hand, Kobe only had 1 season in his 20-year career where he averaged at least 2 steals per game, and he never once led the league in that category. Despite the fact that Kobe played 5 more seasons and nearly 300 more games in his career, Jordan actually leads Bryant on the all-time steals list by nearly 600 steals. To put it simply, when it comes to forcing turnovers and stripping the ball from the opponent, MJ was on another level entirely. So let's look at another aspect of defense, blocking shots. Earlier in Kobe's career was when he was at his best as a shot blocker, which makes sense since his explosiveness and his vertical leap was at its greatest during his Froby days. With that being said, Kobe only had one season in his entire NBA career where he averaged at least 1 block per game, and that was a lockout-shortened season in 1999. On the other hand, Jordan had 4 seasons where he averaged at least 1 block per game, getting as high as 1.6 in 1988, which is actually the highest blocks per game average by a guard in NBA history. Along with that, MJ also had a higher career average than Kobe as well. There are other stats that should factor into this comparison as well, like advanced stats, and one of the examples of that is defensive win shares. At Kobe's best in the year 2000, he had a grand total of 4.5 defensive win shares over the course of that season. On the other hand, Jordan exceeded that total in 9 different seasons of his career, getting as high as 6.2 in 1996. Now listen, clearly all of these defensive stats are in favor of MJ. And I'm not bringing these up in an attempt to slander Kobe by any means, as he was at the very least a very good defensive player, but I'm simply pointing out that there's layers to this thing. Now with all of these stats mentioned, some might want to point out that defensive statistics aren't always the best metric to understand the greatness of a defensive player. And you know what? That's a decent point. For example, Dennis Rodman is widely recognized as one of the greatest players of all time by pretty much everyone. Yet Rodman was nothing terribly impressive from a statistical standpoint, as he never had one season where he averaged at least 1 steal or 1 block in the entirety of his NBA career. Some of you may be wondering, if that's the case, what makes him a great defensive player? Well, that would be his skill that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, which is his smothering on-ball defense. A defender can be all over the offensive player and be consistently forcing him into making bad passes and taking bad shots. And for the most part, this wonderful defensive quality will not show up on the stat sheet. So with that in mind, let's revisit the comparison and evaluate how good Kobe was as an on-ball defender. A lot of this relies on personal experience and the eye test. From my observations, Kobe was a much better on-ball defender earlier in his career, as he began conserving some of his energy as he got later into his career. I also believe that Kobe was what I call a situational defender. The Mamba was the kind of elite defensive player who would pick his spots, based on the gravity of the moment, who he's up against, and what he's trying to prove. I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone when I say that Kobe didn't always have the same intensity defensively as he had in the 2008 Summer Olympics. That's because he picks his spots, and that was a spot he picked. Obviously, we've all seen the highlights of Kobe putting the clamps on guys like Dwayne Wade and Kyrie Irving, and in large part, that was because Kobe accepted the challenge of a one-on-one superstar matchup. That was a spot he picked. But as a longtime Lakers fan, I also remember many instances where Kobe got a little lazy on defense and maybe relied a little too heavily on guys like Andrew Bynum to contest his cutting man at the rim. Although Kobe was capable of being the best defender on the court at any time, I also don't remember him bringing his best effort as consistently as guys like Jordan and Rodman. Don't just take it from me though, take it from his championship head coach, Phil Jackson. In his book called The Last Season, which was about the 2004 Lakers, the Zen Master had this to say about the Mamba. Kobe's defense, to be accurate, has faltered in recent years, despite his presence on the league's all-defensive team. The voters have been seduced by his remarkable athleticism and spectacular steals, but he hasn't played sound, fundamental defense. Mesmerized by the ball, he gambles too frequently, putting us out of position, forcing rotations that leave a man wide open, and doesn't keep his feet on the ground. This was Phil's honest perspective after the team imploded with their finals loss in 2004. Since Jackson was then retired at that point, that was probably the most genuine response we could have got from him. That was far from the last time that Phil would comment on Kobe's defensive abilities. And around the year 2010, Phil said that Kobe started winning some of his defensive selections based off of his tenacious reputation and not so much of his actual play on the court. Now, it's no secret that Phil liked to play mind games with his players, and it's possible that he was saying this as a way of motivating his star player to step up his game. Now, whether or not that was the case, I kind of agree with Phil's assessment. Although Kobe made a total of 12 all-defense teams, a total of 9 or 10 probably would have been more accurate, as it appeared clear to me that he had become vastly more selective about giving his best defensive efforts. So at the end of the day, where do I stand on Kobe's defensive abilities? Well, like I said before, he was a top defensive player who was capable of being the best defender on the court any given night, and many times he was. The problem with his defense, according to Phil Jackson and myself, is that Kobe wasn't as consistent as other great defenders, and he didn't have the longevity in that area either. In my own words, I would say that Kobe was a very, very good defensive player, but unlike some other Kobe fans, I think it's a step too far to say that he was one of the greatest defensive players of all time. They were one of the most dominant and iconic tandems that the league has ever seen, and as teammates, they played 8 seasons together, went to the NBA Finals 4 times, and won 3 NBA championships. The thing is, there are many narratives about their time together as superstars, and one of the most common narratives was that Shaq carried Kobe. You hear all kinds of fans, critics, and even analysts make these claims, but is there any legitimacy to it? Today, I'll be answering that as I'm speaking from experience, considering how I watched nearly every single Laker game during that era. In order to come to a conclusion on whether or not Shaq carried Kobe, all we have to do is look at the 3 seasons where they won the championship, seeing how those are the only ones that matter in this instance. Their first championship run came in the 1999 to 2000 season, and with Shaq in his prime MVP form and Kobe ascending as a young superstar, they completely steamrolled the Western Conference, finishing with a 67-15 record. Although the Lakers were running the triangle offense under Phil Jackson and Tex Winter, make no mistake, the regular offensive game plan was designed to run its way through Shaq, as the Lakers played an inside-and-out style of basketball. Kobe would have plenty of opportunities in isolation plays, but the vast majority of the time, the Lakers were looking to feed the big man down low. It was normal for Phil Jackson to ask Kobe to stop looking to score so much in order to get Shaq more involved. But when Shaq was having scoring streaks of his own, Jackson almost never reined him in order to give Kobe more opportunities, which is further evidence that Los Angeles looked to run their offense primarily through O'Neal. Especially during the regular season, Shaq held a strong advantage over Kobe statistically, as the Diesel averaged 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, 3.8 assists, and 3 blocks on 57.4% shooting. Not only was Shaq likely the most dominant offensive player throughout the regular season, but he also finished as that season's runner-up for the Defensive Player of the Year award. Now compare his production to the Mamba, and you'll see just how big of a gap there was between the two in terms of impact, as the 21-year-old Kobe put up just 22.5 points, 6.3 rebounds, 4.9 assists, and 1.6 steals on 46.8% shooting. Again, that's quite impressive for a developing star who's in his early 20s, but there was no denying that Shaq was clearly the superior player at this point. But as we all know, the NBA championship is won and lost in the playoffs, not the regular season. The first round was a hard-fought best-of-5 series that went the distance. It was against their rivals, the Sacramento Kings. Although Shaq was likely the MVP of that series, Kobe was no slouch either, as he put up a monstrous stat line of his own. In the second round, the Lakers handily defeated the Phoenix Suns 4-1, and Shaq once again clearly outshined Kobe in terms of production. With that being said, Kobe's impact was still tremendously significant throughout the series, as he not only poured in decent numbers offensively, but he also completely locked down Phoenix's all-star point guard Jason Kidd, who shot awful percentages and committed a total of 18 turnovers thanks mostly to the Mamba smothering him consistently. In the Western Conference Finals, the Lakers and Blazers had a hard-fought 7-game series. Once again, Shaq clearly outproduced Kobe offensively, but Bryant was incredible defensively and even averaged more block shots that series than Shaq did. One thing that's often forgotten is that the Lakers were heading into the fourth quarter of Game 7 trailing by a whopping 13 points. And although the famous lob from Kobe to Shaq is the iconic moment in people's minds, many people don't realize that it was Kobe who led the charge that saved the Lakers season, as he outscored Shaq, out-assisted him, out-rebounded him, and out-blocked him with half the amount of turnovers. In other words, one may go as far as saying that Kobe was the one who carried the Lakers in the most crucial game of their season. On to the NBA Finals now, where the Lakers and Pacers went to 6 games before Los Angeles eventually clinched their first title in over a decade. Shaq was named the Finals MVP of that series, and rightly so, as he completely and utterly outclassed Kobe statistically, while playing in all 6 games, compared to Kobe, who missed nearly 2 whole games due to his famous ankle injury. Bryant did have that iconic overtime sequence in Game 4, where he took over the game after Shaq had fouled out and hit 3 incredibly clutch shots to seal the win for Los Angeles. Based on that game alone, you have to recognize that Kobe at least had somewhat of a positive impact on the series. But given how much Shaq dominated throughout the rest of the series, it still may be fair to say that O'Neal carried the Lakers in these finals. The thing is, in all 3 of the Lakers' championship runs, the NBA championship was likely decided in the Western Conference Finals, since the 2 best teams overall were clearly represented by the West. If Kobe doesn't come up clutch to defeat Portland in 7 games, then Shaq isn't able to dominate the NBA Finals in the first place. So in conclusion, is it fair to say that Shaq carried Kobe in the 2000 season? I would say that it's at least plausible, and I would respect someone's opinion either way. But one thing that can't be argued is that Shaq was clearly Batman in their first championship run, while Kobe played the more complementary role of Robin. Now let's tackle the 2000 to 2001 season. Kobe's individual skills took a huge leap forward this season, as him and Shaq had nearly identical scoring averages at the end of the regular season. But that's where they began their historic undefeated run through the Western Conference playoffs. Once again, it was the popular belief among people who followed the NBA that the Western Conference was much stronger than the Eastern Conference during this era. And with that being said, Kobe was arguably the best player on the Lakers during those inter-conference battles, as he efficiently filled up the stat sheet and dominated the game on both ends of the court. One of their more crucial series was their sweep over the first-seeded San Antonio Spurs in the West Finals, and in that series specifically, Kobe was almost certainly the MVP of that 4-game stretch. When the NBA Finals came, it was O'Neal who yet again dominated on a historic level, putting up completely insane numbers regardless of the fact that he was being defended by that season's Defensive Player of the Year, Dikembe Mutombo. Considering how Kobe was arguably the best in the West playoffs, it would be insanely inappropriate to say that he was carried this season, regardless of the fact that Shaq was the definitive Finals MVP against Philadelphia. In conclusion, Kobe was not carried in 2001. This brings us now to the final championship year of the Lakers three-peat, the 2001 to 2002 season. Shaq's regular season numbers indicated that he was still the premier player in Los Angeles, but Kobe put up solid all-around numbers of his own, as the Lakers finished the regular season with a 58-24 record. Once again, Kobe was pretty solid throughout the Western Conference playoffs, as they had a tough road through Portland, San Antonio, and Sacramento. He wasn't as efficient as the previous postseason, but he still produced greatly and made plenty of timely baskets that were the difference in many close games. In the 7th and deciding game against Sacramento, Kobe dropped 30 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds. Without his impact, Sacramento are the ones that win that series. Of course, the refs might have had something to do with that too, but that's a topic for another video. With all of that being said, Shaq consistently outproduced Kobe this postseason, and in the NBA Finals against the New Jersey Nets, the Diesel was the main reason the Lakers swept them so handily, as he deservedly won his 3rd straight Finals MVP. Shaq absolutely dominated, as he broke the NBA Finals record for the most points scored in a 4-game series. This completely overshadowed Kobe's terrific performance, as the Mamba scored roughly 27 points per game on insanely efficient shooting splits. Although Shaq deserved every Finals MVP he got, you can't deny Kobe's crucial impact when the games mattered the most. For this reason, the conclusion is that Kobe was not carried by Shaq in the 2002 season. Now let me make this extremely clear. As we reflect and evaluate the Lakers three-peat, the evidence is clear that Shaq was the best player during those championship runs. And frankly, it wasn't all that close. He was Batman and Kobe was Robin. Whoever argues otherwise either simply didn't watch or is just being an extremely biased Kobe fan. Kobe was between the ages of 20 to 22, while Shaq was in his late 20s and in the prime of his career. Considering where they were at in their careers, it's understandable that this is how the pecking order unfolded. Even with this being said, I think it's extremely disrespectful to Kobe's contribution to say that Shaq carried him. When I think of the word carried, I think of LeBron dragging an injury-laden Cavs team to the NBA Finals in 2018. I think of Kobe willing the Lakers to the playoffs in 2006 with guys like Smush Parker and Kwame Brown in the starting lineup. I think of Michael Jordan willing his team of mostly crackheads to the playoffs and dropping 63 points against the first-seeded Boston Celtics in 1986. Those are legitimate examples of superstars carrying their teams. Shaq and Kobe simultaneously steamrolling the league together as complementary superstars is far from the definition of a carry, even if Shaq was clearly the superior player. As a way to celebrate and remember Kobe on his birthday, I wanted to make a list about his career, but so much of his career has been well documented and most of his legendary moments we already know all about. So as one of the ultimate Kobe superfans, I thought hard and I tried to make a list of some of the most interesting and lesser known details about the Mamba. I'm curious about how many of these 8 things you already knew, so let me know in a comment when the video is done. Here's 8 rarely known facts about Kobe Bryant. Number 1. He claimed he could be the best point guard. In the 2012 to 2013 season, Kobe was 34 years old and was in his 17th season in the league. And this would be his last season as an MVP caliber player that we all remember famously ended with the Achilles tear. I've gone on in past videos about how incredibly impressive this season was. But one thing I haven't yet mentioned is about his small stretch of games where he played primarily as a facilitator. It was January in a 3-game home stretch against Utah, Oklahoma City, and New Orleans. And in those games, he put up stat lines of 14 points, 14 assists, 9 rebounds, then 21 points, 14 assists, 9 rebounds, and then 14 points, 11 assists, and 8 rebounds. A more selective Kobe shot 59% from the field over that stretch, and the Lakers won all 3 games. In the post-game interview of the 3rd game, Kobe was asked many questions about his newfound love of facilitating, and Kobe gave credit to his childhood idol, Magic Johnson. When asked how he would do if he focused all of his energy on being a point guard for an entire season, Kobe responded with this.
What you think I'm gonna say? I wasn't gonna be the best.
Number 2. Kobe turned down a scoring crown. Heading into the Lakers' final regular season game of the 2011-2012 season, a 23-year-old Kevin Durant and a 33-year-old Kobe Bryant were sitting atop the rest of the league as scorers. Durant was averaging 28 points per game and Kobe was averaging 27.8. He would need just 38 points to take the scoring championship away from Durant. The Thunder had no regular season games left to be played, but it appeared that Kobe had one more opportunity to take the crown as his own. It would be in Sacramento against a terrible Kings team that Kobe averaged 33.5 points against that season. So if he really went for it, 38 points is theoretically something that the Mamba could have easily accomplished. The thing is, the Lakers were already locked into the 3rd seed of the Western Conference, and the difference between a win and loss in Sacramento was completely meaningless from a team perspective. When asked about the scoring title, Kobe said, "It's not very important. San Antonio was playing me single coverage yesterday. If it was important to me, I would have gone for 50 yesterday." So when given the opportunity, Kobe sat out the game against Sacramento to instead rest and prepare himself for the playoffs. People have said this to me before, but if anyone ever says Kobe's desires for stats and personal accolades were stronger than his desire to win, then please point them to this game. Number 3. At a time, Kobe was planning to join forces with Michael Jordan on the Wizards. When Michael Jordan returned to play basketball with the Wizards, he was doing it at a time where he was also the team's president of basketball operations. During his 2 seasons playing with the Wizards, there were ongoing private conversations between Kobe and Jordan. Kobe was frustrated playing alongside of Shaquille O'Neal for many well-documented reasons that I'm sure most of you are aware of. Kobe's free agency was approaching in 2004, and that would be the time for him to head to Washington. But Jordan was no longer playing at that point, and it was assumed by pretty much everyone, including Jordan, that when he was done playing with the Wizards, he would assume his role as the team's president of basketball operations. But that's when the plan fell through, as the Wizards owner Abe Pollin fired Jordan in May of 2003. When asked if the rumor was true that he planned on joining Jordan in Washington, Kobe said, "That's true. I've always been big on having mentors. Being around guys who have done it before and done it at a high level. I always tried to pick their brains and absorb knowledge. Obviously, being in that situation, it would have helped having to be around him every day and so on. We would have put together a great team, and we would have won championships." Looking back on it, this is definitely one of the more interesting what-if scenarios for the career of both Kobe and Jordan. Number 4. Kobe was actually booed at Staples Center. This one requires a little bit more context, but Laker fans were in a different headspace in the mid-2000s. After the departure of Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe had a terrible supporting cast, and in the next several seasons, Kobe was either missing the playoffs or getting bounced in the first round, despite the fact that he was leading the league in scoring. Many of us Laker fans were beginning to question if Kobe could win a championship for us without Shaq, and Kobe was starting to doubt as well. After being eliminated from the playoffs for the second straight year to the Phoenix Suns, the Mamba took his frustration to the media and publicly demanded a trade in the summer of 2007. This started a whirlwind of rumors and a stressful offseason for Laker fans. At any moment, we were expecting news to break that Kobe had been traded to the Bulls like he wanted. Despite Kobe's demands, management refused to trade Kobe. This brought us to October 30th, 2007. It was opening night against the Houston Rockets, and Kobe gets booed by the Staples Center crowd at his introduction and in his first few possessions when touching the basketball. It was a surreal sight considering everything Kobe had already accomplished for that crowd. Kobe then had a legendary performance in a thrilling game and dropped 45 points. The funniest part was that in just 2 hours after the crowd was booing him, that same Laker crowd was then chanting his name at the free throw line.
Half minute to play here in the third quarter.
Lakers ultimately lose the game by 2 points. They land Pau Gasol in a trade a couple months later, and the rest is history. Number 5. Kobe tried out for the Celtics and was nearly drafted by them. Kobe was a young and exciting prospect heading into the NBA, but as a 17-year-old, the expectations of him were far from being as high as several other rookies coming into the league. The Celtics then asked a high school version of Kobe to come in for a workout. As a lifelong Lakers fan, Kobe certainly wasn't comfortable sporting the Celtic green, and said years later that he really didn't want to put the uniform on. Unsurprisingly, everyone in the Celtics organization was impressed with his skills and abilities. The head coach of the Celtics, M.L. Carr, said, "I'm telling you, he put on a shooting exhibition the way he stroked the ball." Carr was also impressed with Kobe's knowledge and appreciation for Celtics history, saying, "He said all the right things. He sounded like a Celtic." Celtics general manager at the time, Jan Volk, said, "If you closed your eyes and thought a little bit, you might have thought you were watching Michael Jordan." With praise like that, it would seem like a foregone conclusion that the Celtics would draft Kobe. But with that being said, the Boston Celtics own the 9th overall pick in the draft, which they almost certainly would have used to take Kobe. But the 96 draft was loaded with talent, and there were 6 players with lots of hype surrounding them, known as the Super Six of 96. They were Allen Iverson, Marcus Camby, Ray Allen, Antoine Walker, Sharif Abdul-Rahim, and Stephon Marbury. It was assumed that if you had a top 6 pick, you couldn't pass these guys up. The Celtics managed to pull off a trade to move up from the 9th pick to the 6th pick, which they then used to select the 6'8" Antoine Walker. A great player, but he isn't Kobe, and the Celtics involved are still regretting that decision to this day. When asked how Kobe would have responded if the Celtics had drafted him, he said, "I would have tried to carry on Bird's legacy. Absolutely. I would have done it with a tremendous amount of pride and honor." Number 6. Kobe got MVP chance in Boston. Not much backstory to this one. It seemed as if it was just a regular night in Boston in early 2007. Well, Kobe was doing Kobe things that evening, hitting some of the most absurd, difficult, and highlight-worthy shots. I would say of his career, but these were pretty standard in his prime, let's be honest. The game is getting out of hand for the Celtics, and it's Kobe that's closing it out. After each incredible basket, the crowd grows louder and louder, as there's pretty much nothing to root for besides Kobe at a certain point. He then caps off his night with an insanely difficult three-pointer that basically only he can hit regularly. It was his 43rd point, and that triggered this unthinkable event.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston.
In Boston.
Of all places.
Are you kidding me? I know Red Auerbach is rolling over.
Number 7. Kobe was actually outplayed in his first 50-point game. It's December of the 2000 to 2001 season. Kobe is just now starting to assert himself as one of the elite scorers of the NBA, as he took his average from 22.5 points per game to 28.5 this season. The 14-5 Lakers were taking on the 5-13 Warriors in a game they were obviously expected to win. The only significant thing the Lakers defense really had to worry about was that on the other side of the court was Antawn Jamison, who was coming off of a 51-point and 14-rebound performance against the Supersonics. What ensued was one of the most epic solo duels of Kobe's career, as both stars were trading baskets back and forth throughout the game. Kobe was on fire and was having probably the best game of his career up to that point, but Jamison was enjoying an encore performance from a few nights prior. The game eventually went to overtime and it came down to the final possession. Kobe shot a difficult three and missed wide right, and the Warriors won the game. Kobe finished with 51 points, 7 rebounds, and 8 assists on 51% shooting, just to be outdone by Jamison's 51 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists on 72% shooting. A pretty interesting footnote to two guys who would go on to be future teammates. Number 8. For a while, Kobe listened to Don't Stop Believing every single day. It's the 2008 NBA Finals, Game 6. One of the worst memories of any Lakers fan, and Kobe is no exception. The Lakers were destroyed by the rival Celtics by 39 points, sending the Lakers home. Amidst Kobe's tears and amidst the celebration in Boston, playing loudly throughout the stadium was Don't Stop Believing by Journey. For Kobe, the song naturally became attached to the painful memory of falling short to the Celtics and failing to win a championship. So Kobe responded by doing one of the most Mamba mentality things ever, and listened to the song every single day leading up to his 2009 championship in order to keep the pain and motivation fresh in his mind. If we do the math, that's 362 straight days of listening to that song and reliving one of your worst experiences. It sounds crazy, but it worked. And this is why we celebrate this legend, because this guy was just wired differently, in such a way that inspires many of us. They're the two greatest shooting guards of basketball history, and although they sometimes appeared as mirror images of one another in terms of style, mentality, and personality, both individuals were actually much more different than the fans typically recognize. I've witnessed countless hours of both of these legends playing the game of basketball, and today, I'm breaking down every major difference that I could recognize in how the two approached and played the game. Obviously, this is just my own limited perspective, so let me know in the comments what are some differences that you've noticed. Number 1. Michael Jordan had much bigger hands. To people who don't know basketball on a deep level, this might initially seem like an insignificant detail, but it's actually quite the opposite. Phil Jackson has spoken in depth about the advantages Jordan had due to his monstrous hands, and even Jordan himself has elaborated on the edge it gave over the competition. Jordan's hands weren't just large for his stature, but he actually had some of the largest hands of any player of NBA history. With Jordan's massive mitts, he could easily palm and control the basketball, and he could use greater pump fakes and misdirect players more easily. It also allowed him to effortlessly alter and change his shot in midair, which would certainly be more difficult for players who had less control of the basketball due to their smaller hands. And obviously, in an era of hand checking, it made Jordan even more difficult defensively. In an interview in 2013, Kobe spoke about the difficulties of developing his game without that inherent advantage, saying, "Michael was blessed with massive hands, and Dr. J as well. I wasn't. I have big hands, but Jordan and Irving can literally pick up the ball like an orange. So I've had to do things to strengthen my hands, strengthen my forearms, to make sure that I have the grip to be able to do it. They obviously had the natural capabilities to do it. I had to work to get the strength to be able to do it." Number 2. Kobe was a harder worker. This is certainly a bold claim, and isn't meant as a slight to MJ, as he's certainly one of the hardest working basketball players that the game has ever seen. But on the other hand, Kobe has an argument for being the hardest working athlete of all time. As I mentioned in a previous video, the great Phil Jackson made this bold claim himself, which is quite stunning since he spent all of his coaching career with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Feel free to pause the video for more time to read Phil Jackson's full quote. As legendary as Kobe's drive was, I could even argue that it was sometimes a negative for Kobe, as he pushed himself so hard that it sometimes had lingering effects on his body. The Mamba was known to play through injury, play heavy minutes, put an insane amount of time into the gym, and apparently lived most of his basketball life on only 4 hours of sleep each night. With an insane work ethic like that, it's no wonder why he's one of the greatest players of all time. But then again, it also makes sense why he dealt with so many injuries throughout his career, considering the fact that he willingly put so much strain on his body. Number 3. Kobe was a better perimeter shooter. Numerous people have made the same conclusion, including Michael Jordan's longtime teammate Scottie Pippen. When you look at their three-point percentage next to one another, Kobe has a very slight advantage, and it's so close that you could basically call it a tie. But one of the key differences was the fact that Kobe had a much higher tendency of shooting three-pointers, as he shot more than 3 times as many as Jordan did over the course of his career. Some of that has to do with the surge in three-point attempts as the game has evolved, but even if you adjust for inflation, Kobe still had a higher tendency of three-point attempts. Analytics have proven that as you take more shots, percentages generally decrease, because you can be less selective with your opportunities, and yet despite that, the Mamba maintains his edge. The perimeter shot advantage isn't just about three-pointers though. Kobe loved to take shots in rhythm just a step or two inside of the three-point line. The Mamba was excellent at these shots, whether he was open or contested. With that being said, analytics show that generally these are the most inefficient shots on the court, mostly because of their distance and lower conversion rate, while still being worth only 2 points. Which brings us to the next difference. Number 4. Michael Jordan had better shot selection. It's no secret that Michael was a more efficient scorer than Kobe Bryant, averaging 30 points per game over the course of his career on nearly 50% shooting. A big reason for Jordan's significant edge over Kobe in field goal efficiency was because of MJ's sound decision making. Although Michael is famous for making some difficult shots, he certainly wasn't seeking them out. In his younger years, Jordan scored a large portion of his points in the paint and from the free throw line. As he aged, his game became more about the mid-range, and he rarely settled for more difficult opportunities, as he used his high basketball IQ to put himself in good positions to score. Although Kobe had many of these same skills as Jordan, the Mamba's supreme confidence led him to take a tremendous amount of difficult shots that most players wouldn't attempt. During his prime, it was common on a nightly basis for him to shoot through double teams, take heavily contested and off-balance shots from the perimeter, and he took a ton of what us hoopers would call heat check shots. Once again, Phil Jackson gave his own perspective on this topic, and said that Jordan always played within the flow of the team's offense and rarely tried to force anything, while Kobe may have been the more explosive player, but he also had a strong tendency of trying to force the situation and take over games offensively. Number 5. Jordan was the more durable athlete. I somewhat alluded to this earlier, but Kobe was dealing with injuries throughout the majority of his career and caused him to miss well over 100 games. Even in the games where he played, he was often dealing with nagging pain in his hands, wrists, shoulders, knees, and ankles. On the other hand, other than Jordan's second season with a broken foot, he rarely missed any games due to an injury and was often performing at full strength. In fact, excluding his second season, Jordan missed only 7 out of a possible 919 games with the Bulls. This was a testament to his stellar conditioning and his God-given athleticism. Number 6. Kobe was better with his left hand. It's not like there's any fancy left-handed specific stats that I can share with you guys, but you'll just have to take my word for it on this one. Now, Jordan has possibly the greatest layup package in NBA history, and a major aspect of that was his incredible ability to finish the play with his left hand. If that was the only aspect we were looking at, then this advantage would go to Jordan. But I'm pretty sure that Kobe still could have been a legit star even if he had to use his left hand as his dominant hand. The Mamba was working on his left-handed game from an extremely early age. When he broke his right hand, he showed up to Lakers practice and shot entirely with his left hand. And when he injured his right shoulder, he played a significant amount of a regular season game with only his left hand. And of course, many of us remember the ridiculous turnaround left-handed three against the Dallas Mavericks. If Kobe had to play a mid-range game as a left-handed shooter, he's one of the few stars who I believe could still be a successful scorer. Number 7. Michael Jordan had a greater vertical leap. Vertical leap comparisons are usually a sure way to get comment sections in heated debates, because it's hard to get credible and precise estimations of each player's leap. With that being said, most listings have Jordan's leap between 46 and 48 inches, while Kobe's is listed around only 38 inches. Even by just the eye test, it's not hard to see how Jordan could have such a tremendous vertical, considering his iconic and comfortably stylish free throw line dunks, and also how Jordan made his hang time famous by appearing to simply wait in the air for his defender to make his descent. Number 8. Michael Jordan is a more competitive person. Whether this is an advantage for MJ or a problem for MJ is really up to your interpretation. When it comes to their mentalities on the basketball court, both players were about as competitive, driven, and intense as a player could possibly be, but off the court is another story. In Kobe Bryant's own words, Michael Jordan was a more competitive person, from the standpoint that Jordan was competitive about more things. I don't think Kobe would have ever conceded that anyone cared more about the outcome of a basketball game than he did. But in an interview, Kobe explained that he's only extremely competitive about the things he cares about, while Jordan is competitive in absolutely everything. Kobe gave a funny example of a time the two athletes were out to dinner together and how Jordan would eat the food quickly just to finish his meal before Kobe did. There's many more differences between these two great basketball legends, but these were the biggest ones in my opinion. Let me know in the comment section what you think were the biggest differences between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Today, our matchup is the big fundamental, Tim Duncan, versus the Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant. One legend built his legacy over a long-lasting career of 19 seasons with the San Antonio Spurs, while the other played 20 seasons with the Los Angeles Lakers. Two men who each have an argument of being the greatest player of their era. When you're comparing a shooting guard against a power forward or center, then the means in which you compare the two have to change. For example, it's normal for a guard to average more assists than a big man because of how much time the guard spends handling the ball, and he also does more of his passing from the perimeter, which is where most of the facilitating takes place. On the other hand, it's normal for a big man to average more rebounds, considering his size and where he positions himself on the court. So what this means is that having categories like rebounding and playmaking would be pretty ridiculous considering the obvious advantages that are built into the different positions. So in this video, we need more general categories, and these are the 4 I've chosen for this comparison: offense, defense, playoffs, and accolades. First off, offense. Fundamentally, these two players have an extremely different approach on the offensive end, as Duncan was more of the type to play within the flow of the offense. He didn't have to be the leading scorer to be extremely effective on his team. Kobe, on the other hand, had a much more aggressive tendency and even personality, and their differences showed on the court. Tim Duncan is currently in 15th place on the all-time scoring list with over 26,000 points, and he averaged 19 points per game over the course of his career on 55.1 true shooting percentage. Kobe is in 4th place on the all-time scoring list with nearly 34,000 points, and he averaged 25 points per game on 55% true shooting percentage, and he also won 2 scoring titles. When you simply look at their field goal percentage, Duncan had the advantage, which is expected from a big man. But when you take the other aspects into account, like perimeter shooting and free throw shooting, Kobe now has almost the exact same true shooting percentage as Duncan, despite the fact that he shot the ball nearly 50% more often than Duncan did. Analytics have proven that as you shoot the ball more, efficiency generally goes down, as more shot attempts means being less selective and results in taking more contested shots. Despite that, Kobe was a lot more efficient than people generally give him credit for, which is pretty incredible considering the fact that he took a lot of what Paul George would call bad shots. Duncan was never the dynamic scorer that Kobe was, but he didn't have to be, and that was somewhat the beauty of Tim Duncan's game, as he could fit with many different offenses and with many different personalities. These two were so uniquely different in the way they approached the game. I could break this category down for an hour, looking at all the different angles and perspectives, but for me, at the end of the day, Kobe has to take the offensive category, as he's one of the most dominant scorers of NBA history, and believe it or not, he was also an underrated passer. Of the players who scored at least 25,000 points in their career, the only players who accumulated more assists than Kobe did was Oscar Robertson and LeBron James. That's it. Offense goes to Kobe. Second up is defense. Both of these legends were 2 of the greatest defenders at their position. Neither player won a Defensive Player of the Year award, but they were both consistently elite and earned many All-Defense Team selections. Duncan has 15 All-Defense Team selections, which is the most in NBA history. For his career, he averaged 0.7 steals and 2.2 blocks. Kobe has 12 All-Defense Team selections and 9 First-Team selections, which is tied with Michael Jordan, Gary Payton, and Kevin Garnett for the most First-Team selections in NBA history. he averaged 1.4 steals and 0.5 blocks over the course of his career. Duncan in many ways was the model of consistency, and the biggest example of that was probably his defense, as he's the only player to make the All-NBA and All-Defense team for 13 straight seasons. Even as Duncan aged and his reliability as a strong offensive threat dwindled, still his elite defensive presence remained. He wasn't the most athletically gifted player, but he had an incredibly high defensive IQ and was a great team leader for a defensive-minded team. Duncan finished 5th on the all-time list in blocked shots, putting himself in the debate for the title of greatest rim protector to never win the Defensive Player of the Year. Now, Kobe was elite too, especially in his early years in Los Angeles, and ask anyone on the 2008 Redeem team and they'll tell you about how Kobe's defensive tenacity, dedication, commitment, and leadership led that team to be as suffocating defensively as they could be. It was remarkable how throughout the majority of Kobe's career that he could use so much energy on offense while also remaining the best defender at his position. In 2006, Kobe became the only player to officially average over 35 points per game while also making first team all-defense. He wasn't the type to lead the league in steals or blocks, but where he really stood out was with his on-ball defense, as Kobe was great at trapping his opponent, causing turnovers, and just generally making the offensive player frustrated, especially when Kobe put his mind to it in the most crucial situations. The thing is, Kobe didn't have the defensive longevity that Tim Duncan had. Even though the Mamba made 12 all-defense teams, which is just 3 short of Tim Duncan's total, even that 12 total is a bit questionable for Kobe. In an interview, the all-time great and brutally honest Phil Jackson said that Kobe won some of his later all-defense team selections because of his reputation, and not necessarily because of what he was actually doing on the court. In other words, Kobe's own Hall of Fame head coach said that his defense was a bit overrated, at least in terms of the later years of his career. As someone who personally witnessed more games from Kobe than any other player, I have to agree with this statement. As Kobe aged, it became much more common for him to get blown by the offensive player and simply rely on the center or the help defender to bail him out. It wasn't that Kobe couldn't still be great defensively, it was just that he picked his spots, rather than being a lockdown force all game long. Also consider the fact that Phil Jackson made this comment in 2010 and implied that this reputation thing had been going on with Kobe for a bit. So when did this reputation thing start? 2008? 2009? When you look at it that way, you're talking about around 8 seasons of Kobe's career where he was not one of the best defenders. The same thing can't be said about the big fundamental. A slight edge on defense goes to Tim Duncan. Third up is the playoffs. When you're comparing some of the greatest players of all time, you have to factor in the postseason, as the game completely changes, and the pressure, the nerves, and the magnitude of the moment reveal what players are really made of. Tim Duncan led the playoffs in total points 2 times, in blocks 3 times, and in rebounds 6 times. Over his 251 games in the playoffs, he averaged 20.6 points, 11.4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2.3 blocks on 54.8 true shooting percentage. Kobe led the playoffs in total points 4 times and in steals 2 times. In his 220 playoff games, he averaged 25.6 points, 5.1 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 1.7 steals on 54.1 true shooting percentage. Both players had postseason careers that were packed full with iconic moments. Both players had 5 championship rings, but when it comes to playoff comparisons, it's not really about the stats that drive the debate, but it's usually the narratives about the players. For example, people often criticize Kobe for, quote, getting carried by Shaq to his first 3 championships. But as I've talked about in several videos before, that's because Shaq took advantage of the mismatches in the NBA Finals against the Eastern Conference. If we're being honest, the NBA champions were decided in the Western Conference playoffs in the early 2000s. And in 2 out of those 3 championship runs, it was Kobe who was arguably the MVP of the West playoffs, and in both 2001 and 2002, where Kobe's Lakers defeated Tim Duncan's Spurs, Kobe was the best performer for Los Angeles. Now some argue that Tim Duncan's final championship in 2014 was more as a role player than the best player on the court, and considering the fact that he was 37 and Kawhi Leonard was the finals MVP, there may be some validity to that claim. But as far as the best performance in an NBA Finals series, that definitely goes to Duncan in 2003, who put up absolutely ridiculous numbers in those 6 games against New Jersey, including a near quadruple-double in the championship clinching game. In my opinion, Kobe's most impressive championship run came in 2010, where it wasn't so much about his solid playoff numbers, but it was more about the fact that he did it with a broken index finger on his shooting hand. These guys have so many postseason minutes that you can find instances where both guys played above expectations and below expectations. You can stir up any narrative to discredit either contender, but there's always a narrative-based counter-argument against the other player as well. In my opinion, both guys had equally impressive stats and achievements when the games mattered most. Playoffs is a tie between these two legends. Last on the list of categories is accolades, and both of these icons had a ton of them. Duncan was a 5-time NBA champion and he won 3 Finals MVPs. He was a 15-time All-Star, made 15 All-NBA teams, 15 All-Defense teams, and was a 2-time League MVP. In his 19 seasons, he averaged 19 points, 10.8 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.7 steals, and 2.2 blocks on 55.1 true shooting percentage. Kobe was a 5-time champion and he won 2 Finals MVPs. He made 18 All-Star teams, 15 All-NBA teams, and 12 All-Defense teams. He was the 2008 League MVP and he won 2 scoring titles. In his 20 seasons, he averaged 25 points, 5.2 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.5 blocks on 55 true shooting percentage. Ultimately, as usual in these videos, it's extremely close, and I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but just a matter of opinion and preference. But for me, Kobe Bryant is the greater basketball player and ranks higher on my all-time list. To boil it down as simply as possible, Kobe was simply the more dynamic and dominant offensive force, and to me, the advantage Kobe has over Duncan offensively is significantly greater than the advantage Duncan has over Kobe defensively. I do think there's a strong argument for Duncan, but if you make that argument, then I think it's mostly about stuff that goes beyond the stat sheet. For example, he was a quiet and humble leader who led by example. He's a teammate who's incredibly easy to get along with, which certainly isn't something that Kobe was known for. And Duncan sacrificed money on several occasions to allow his team to recruit more talent. Now, I'm not one to suggest that any worker should take less money than what they're worth, but at the same time, Duncan's willingness to sacrifice some of his own potential income for the sake of the team just goes to show how his selflessness and team-first approach was so instrumental in all of the success that San Antonio experienced. So to reiterate, I think Kobe is literally the better basketball player. But if we're talking about who is the person you would rather have in the organization for everything they bring to the organization on and off the court, then Tim Duncan is likely the right choice. It's January 22nd, 2006, and the Los Angeles Lakers are preparing for battle with the Toronto Raptors. Just a month before this game had taken place, Kobe had dropped 62 points in only 3 quarters of play against the eventual Western Conference champion, the Dallas Mavericks. According to Dallas's Dirk Nowitzki, Kobe easily could have had 80 that night if he wanted to, and simply played the 4th quarter. At the end of the 3rd quarter of the Dallas game, Kobe's former teammate and assistant coach Brian Shaw encouraged Kobe to go back out there for the 4th quarter and try to get 80 points, a feat that, at the time, no one other than Wilt Chamberlain had ever accomplished. But Kobe told him, "Nah, we're up 30. When the time is right and the team needs it, I'll do it." Which brings us back to January 22nd, 2006. At the time, the talk of the NBA was about a young LeBron James who dropped 51 points on the Jazz the night before, and the talk of the sports world was about the NFL, as both the AFC and NFC championship games were played that morning. But regardless, Kobe was prepared to be the headline story of all of tomorrow's newspapers. Now, January 22nd was actually Kobe's grandfather's birthday, and his grandfather passed away just a few years before this night. Due to this, Kobe's grandmother was looking to do something different that night, and decided to attend Kobe's game at Staples Center. According to Kobe, his grandma had never attended a single game of Kobe's during his NBA career, because her nerves couldn't handle it. But this night, she decided to tough it out, and witness the first and only professional game of Kobe's that she would ever see. Now, Kobe was very close with his grandmother, and of his family members, he said that he and his grandma probably had the most in common from a personality standpoint. Given how she meant a lot to him, and how she was probably mourning that day without her husband, Kobe wanted to give her a great performance to remember. It wouldn't be easy, because the Lakers were heading into that evening with a 21-19 record and had lost 8 of their last 14 games. At this point, as a struggling franchise, the team really needed some optimism or a burst of energy injected back into the organization, and several minutes into the game, it appeared it wasn't coming anytime soon. Kobe was doing what he could to keep the team in the game, scoring in a variety of ways, but Toronto had a very good offense and they had a 7-point lead by the end of the first quarter. The frustrating team play continued for the Lakers, and despite Kobe's 26 points, Toronto was dominating the game, leading by 14 points with momentum completely in their favor.
Welcome back to the Lakers halftime report presented by Jack in the Box, and the Purple and Gold in danger of losing their third straight game, trailing the Raptors 63-49 at the break. So, Jack, let me ask you this. They're down 14. Is that a deficit that Kobe Bryant alone can overcome?
No, he can't.
No, he can't.
You guys know where things go from here. Toronto gets the lead up to 17 before Kobe makes his first strike with just under 11 minutes left in the third quarter, and it was a complete Black Mamba onslaught from that point on. If you watch this game closely or seen Jimmy High Roller's terrific video on this game, then you know that unlike popular belief, it wasn't just Jalen Rose who got torched by Kobe, but really it was the whole team, and first and foremost among them was Morris Peterson. They threw just about every defender and every kind of defense they could at Kobe, but it didn't matter, as he was in the same zone that the Dallas defense had experienced just a month earlier. Kobe had 53 points at the end of the third quarter. At this point in his career, Kobe had got 50 or more points through just 3 quarters of play on 5 separate occasions. But since this game was so close, this was the first and only instance where Kobe would actually play in the fourth quarter. To start the fourth quarter, Kobe missed his first 2 shots, but on the second one, he gets gouged in the eye by Mo Peterson, which wasn't the first time Kobe was hit around the face and it wasn't called. A furious Mamba gave the referee an earful, and he gives him a technical foul as a result. It's almost like you could hear Kobe's thoughts in that moment.
That's all I needed. That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
Kobe starts up the onslaught again, hitting just about every shot from everywhere on the court. As he continues his fiery shooting, the attention of the game starts drifting away from the scoreboard and towards Kobe's point total. With his 63rd point, he set a new personal career high. With his 72nd point, he passed Elgin Baylor to become the highest scoring Laker in franchise history. With his 79th point, he became the second highest single game scorer in NBA history, and the highest game ever captured on film. At this point, the game was sealed, and there was a couple instances where Phil Jackson could have taken Kobe out of the game, but instead, he kept him in, and from the free throw line, Kobe achieved the iconic number that's become such a staple of his legacy.
And an 81-point game.
He scored 81 points on 28 of 46 shooting, and what's probably even more impressive than the 81 points was his 55 points in the second half alone, which is also the second greatest in NBA history. I'm pretty sure that Kobe's grandmother was very pleased with her first Laker game. In 2016, 10 years after the event took place, former Toronto Raptors coach Sam Mitchell was asked how he felt about Kobe after all these years, and without hesitation, he said, "I hate him." A couple days later, Kobe was told about Mitchell's comment, and he simply laughed it off and sincerely said, "Thank you for the hate. I appreciate that. Truly, I love that." Obviously, the comment from Mitchell was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, considering the fact that Mitchell and Kobe had very respectful and appreciative interactions afterwards. But as far as Mitchell's disgust at the bad memories that Kobe's mere presence gave him, well, I'm pretty sure that's a feeling a lot of competitors had towards Kobe, and not just Mitchell. I know what some of you guys are already thinking. Underrated? Everyone talks about Kobe, and most people recognize his 06 season as the best year of his career. How could Johnny possibly be crazy enough to call this famous season underrated? Well, dear viewer, the literal definition of underrate is to underestimate the extent, value, or importance of someone or something. It doesn't mean that people don't know about it, or that they don't recognize it as something good. Essentially, it simply means it's better than you think. Many forms of media have done lists that rank the greatest individual seasons of all time. Bleacher Report did one. Let's check for 06 Kobe. Nope, not in the top 10, or even an honorable mention. I've checked a few other lists, and know that this is a common theme. It's one thing for me to just point out that Kobe doesn't make these lists, but to understand how preposterous that really is, we need to dig into the details of this season and evaluate how it compares to other great seasons of NBA history. In Kobe's 05-06 season, he averaged 35.4 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and 1.8 steals on 45% shooting. I would say he led the Lakers, but that would be a massive understatement. He carried the Lakers to a 45-37 record, which was good enough for the 7th seed in the loaded Western Conference. It was incredible that they were able to win 45 games, considering Kobe famously played with a below-average supporting cast. He was first team All-NBA, first team All-Defense, and finished 4th in MVP voting. That's right, all of that gets you just 4th place on the MVP leaderboard. More on that later, but first, let's get into even more details. Kobe's 06 campaign gave us 6 50-point games, 27 40-point games, his 81-point performance, which is the second greatest in NBA history, where he also scored 55 points in the second half alone, and just a month before that, he gave us 62 points in 3 quarters against the Dallas Mavericks. Through 3 quarters, Kobe outscored the entire Mavericks team 62-61. That wasn't just any Mavericks team either. This was an elite defensive team that also made it to the NBA Finals that season. No player in the history of the league has ever single-handedly outscored an entire team over the course of a game. If Kobe had simply played the 4th quarter, he would have had a legitimate shot at doing it. This 06 season was the 9th highest points per game season in NBA history. It made Kobe one of only 5 players to ever average over 35 points in a season. For this next point, we'll be excluding Wilt Chamberlain because he's pretty ridiculous. The only people ahead of Kobe other than Wilt on that list are Rick Barry in 1966 with an average of 35.6 points, James Harden in 2019 with 36.1, and Michael Jordan in 1987 with 37.1. Excluding Wilt, these were the greatest scoring seasons of all time, so these will be the years I'll be comparing with Kobe's 06 season. Despite the fact that Kobe is below those 3 wing players on this list, I'll argue that Kobe's season is clearly the most impressive from a scoring perspective. In the 66-67 season, Rick Barry averaged 35.6 points, and teams around the league were averaging 117.4 points per game. That means that Rick Barry averaged 30.3% of what was the league's team average. In 2019, Harden averaged 36.1 points, while teams were averaging 111.2 points. That's 32.4%. In 1987, Jordan averaged 37.1, and the league averaged 109.9. That's 33.7%. When Kobe put up 35.4 points per game, he did it during one of the lowest scoring seasons in NBA history, as teams were averaging only 97 points per game, which equals 36.5% for Kobe. In 2006, only 5 teams averaged more than 100 points a game, and Kobe's Lakers were not one of them. In James Harden's season, Rick Barry's season, and Michael Jordan's season, every single team in the league averaged over 103 points per game. If that doesn't get the point across, this definitely will. Statistically speaking, in Jordan and Harden's seasons, the worst offense in the entire league would be the second best offense in Kobe's season. In Rick Barry's season, the worst offense in the entire league would easily be the best offense in Kobe's season. Not only did Kobe average 35.5 points in 2006, but he did it at a time when it wasn't supposed to happen. There was significantly less offense, but Kobe was good enough to be the offense for his team, more so than any other player not named Wilt Chamberlain. On top of all of this, Kobe averaged only 3.1 turnovers that year, which is the fewest among this group we're comparing. We've talked a lot about how impressive these seasons were offensively, but consider this. Kobe was the only player out of this group to also make the All-Defense team the same season. Not only that, but Kobe made first team All-Defense, meaning that not only was he the best scorer that season, but he was also the best defender at his position as well. In fact, Kobe's the only player in NBA history to average over 35 points per game while being first team All-Defense. So in a quick recap, Kobe put up 35.4 points on 45% shooting, regardless of the fact that he was facing double teams all year with a below average supporting cast. He carried the offense, he was one of the best defenders in the league, and he drug his team to the playoffs even though they had no business being there. That is the definition of a valuable player. So the fact that Kobe only finished 4th in the most valuable player race is absurd. Instead, Steve Nash was that season's MVP. LeBron James was 2nd, and Dirk Nowitzki was 3rd, even though the 4th placed Kobe seemed like he had the best season of the guys on this list. And I'll explain why this happened. There is a consistent formula to the NBA's MVP voting. There's 2 key aspects. 1,
Obviously, you have to have strong stats. And 2, you have to have a winning team. And when I say a winning team, I mean a winning team. In the last 30 years of the NBA, 29 out of those 30 seasons, the MVP winner came from a top 2 team in his conference. The only exception was Russell Westbrook in 2017, where he averaged his first triple-double and the NBA's first since 1962. Voters were so enamored with Westbrook's triple-double average that they were willing to overlook the MVP voting formula in that case. But in every other instance of the last 30 years, the MVP was only given to a player from a top 2 team. This is another major reason why Kobe's 06 season is underrated, because the formula is stupid, and he should have won MVP that year, or at the very least, should have finished higher than 4th place. The award isn't called the best player on an elite team. Either change the name of the award or start getting it right. The most valuable player, in a literal sense, isn't always on a top 2 team in the conference. Without Kobe, the Lakers would have been at the very bottom of the Western Conference. Why would you expect a guy who has Smush Parker, Kwame Brown, and Luke Walton in his starting lineup to win 60 games?
Kwame Brown, God bless him, is a scrub.
That's ridiculous and completely unrealistic, but that's basically the way it works when it comes to MVP voting. Let me know.
Hopefully my Laker legacy will be that of a champion. I mean, that's why we play. That is the most important thing. It's number one. It's not about how much you like the person. It's not about how many points that person scored. It's not about how many assists that person had. It's how many championships did they bring to the city of Los Angeles. That is the most important thing. Truthfully, it's really about winning. It's not about being coddled. It's not about being catered to. You have a responsibility to the city of Los Angeles to bring championship banners back where they belong. That is your responsibility. You have to understand that nothing else matters. Second place does not matter. Second place means you're the first loser. You have that mentality here. That's what gets you there. This franchise does not hang division banners. It does not hang conference championships. We hang one banner and one banner only, and that's NBA titles. Right? So you have to start there. You have to understand that that's what this is. And you may not like it. You may think it sucks. You may think it's not great sportsmanship. Get over it. It is what it is.
Less than 1 year ago, one of the most shocking things ever seen in sports took place. Luka Doncic, a superstar player in his mid-20s who had just led his team to the NBA Finals the previous season, was suddenly traded in the middle of the night to the most glamorous franchise in basketball history, the Los Angeles Lakers. We all know why the Mavericks didn't want him, and now in LA, he seems happy and content to play out his future in a place where he's embraced, celebrated, and recognized for the Laker great that he is. Or is he? It might seem like things are all hunky-dory at the moment, but these things have a way of changing fast in Los Angeles. Even back in April, after the first round exit, the tone had temporarily shifted in the city. Criticisms about his defense and conditioning started to saturate social media. Murmurs of whether or not Nico Harrison was actually right started to gain momentum. Now, of course, many of those critiques dissipated since Luka spent this entire offseason getting himself in shape and making fans believe that he's turned the corner. But if the results are the same as last season, then you best believe that those critics will get noisy once again. As someone who spent his entire life as a Los Angeles Lakers fan and whose father was a longtime Lakers fan as well, I can tell you with complete certainty we have a very spoiled fan base. Not only do we desire and expect championship success, but we want it on our time frame. And can you really blame us? Historically speaking, winning is the culture in Los Angeles. As Kobe Bryant once said, the Lakers don't hang division banners. It's all about the rings, and usually they deliver. In the history of the Lakers organization, on average, they win one championship per every 4.9 years. There's several franchises that have existed for 10 times longer than that, and are still yet to win a single championship. When it comes to success, and when it comes to a superstar who delivers on their expectations, the Lakers fan base is operating on a completely different paradigm than just about any other franchise. It might seem like they love you in the moment, but at the end of the day, in La La Land, you either win a championship or you're nothing to us. Think about the greatest Lakers in franchise history who never won a championship. Those are guys like Nick Van Exel, Eddie Jones, Karl Malone, Adrian Dantley, and Elgin Baylor. In the case of Baylor, he was definitely the most successful player of that group, and he's been honored by the organization with a retired jersey and a statue. But even that is a bit complicated, because Baylor could be considered as an NBA champion depending on how you look at it. He played in only the first 8 regular season games of the 1971-72 season before an injury forced him into retirement. But the team did go on to win the championship that season, with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain leading the way. And even though Baylor wasn't on the roster for any of the playoff games, the organization still offered him a championship ring at the conclusion of the season. So outside of that very unique situation, let's look back at the greatest Lakers to never win a championship and ask yourself, are any of these guys fondly remembered within the city? There has never been a Laker who's got a statue or who's got his jersey retired while not being on a championship team. He may have not asked for this, but when it comes to this organization and this level of expectations that Luka Doncic is inheriting, it's simple. Deliver or be forgotten. The pressure and expectations are daunting enough when only looking at the history of the team, but when you consider where things are going, it somehow becomes even more daunting. The Lakers just got a new team owner by the name of Mark Walter. This is the same guy who owns the defending champion Los Angeles Dodgers and is paying the roster over $500 million this year alone. It's an organization who's dominating their league to such an extent that the common narrative is that they're ruining baseball. And again, that's who the Lakers just brought in. Based on their history and reputation, there is championship expectations in this city. Based on the star power and track record of the front office, there is championship expectations in this present day. Luka Doncic is awesome. I love his personality, his game, and his humble attitude. But all of that aside, the reality of the situation is that if he doesn't bring a title home for the purple and gold, then he will be remembered at the end of his career as the greatest Laker to never win a championship. Shaquille O'Neal faced this pressure, LeBron James faced this pressure, and now it's Luka's turn. Call it delusional, call it spoiled, call it whatever you want. But that's the championship culture within this city, and I just hope that Luka Doncic truly understands that. So what do you guys think? Are the Lakers and their fan base just too spoiled? Or is there a proper demand for excellence? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Shout out to the members as always, and if you're looking for a taste of what it's like to be a member, I will be live streaming for all channel viewers immediately after the Lakers and Warriors season opener has concluded. So I hope to see you all then for some good post-game discussion. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.